вітаю на шовковім полі, я полкового знамена, дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою зі скидання, воно вібрало у собі.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 419 of the news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, as it is the beginning of a brand new week of reporting, and we are now going to be rounding out the last 2 days before the final day of this week of the war. A very confusing way to lay out the timetable there, sorry about that. But in other news, the Sunday fundraiser was absolutely unbelievable. One of the highest ones,
sir.
I believe it actually was the highest one we've ever had since the year's anniversary fundraiser on the 24th.
I think it was. It was very high. What was it, 18,500 to end up?
I think it was $18.5 thousand raised for revived soldiers of Ukraine. And unbelievable, absolutely amazing. And I want to thank everyone here who is a part of the Lee Spring Army for helping to get that fundraiser to such unbelievable heights. And of course, it is amazing to know that this community is just less than $80,000 away from the $1 million mark in totals raised for all the fundraisers we've ever run from the beginning of the war. Of course, let's go. Of course, when we finally get close to reaching that $1 million goal, and probably within $10,000 to $15,000 of it, we are probably going to be doing a live podcast again for sure. Now, that is a definite date where we will be doing another live podcast like we did on the year's anniversary, because that is going to be a massive milestone for this channel, an entire $1 million raised. And I got to thank everyone once again who's been a part of that from start to finish, from our first fundraiser on March 10th of last year up until last night's fundraiser. It has been absolutely unbelievable. And once again, because Noob of the Year asked, $18.5 thousand is what we have counted the last time we looked at it, and it is unbelievable. But with that, we've got even bigger news today, because it appears that the Russian forces are actually preparing to give up Melitopol as a whole and the Kherson area overall if things continue to deteriorate for their armed forces in the area. And it does appear that a Ukrainian counterattack, at least from what the Russians are seeing and from what our side is also seeing, it does appear that it may be imminent. It may fall within that initial mid-April to late May window that we thought the counteroffensive would fall under. And so, of course, it has not happened yet, but we will be covering all of the news that we've been hearing about and seeing all over the world today, most specifically from Russia and Ukraine, that shows that it may actually be on the horizon, and it appears that the Russians are scared to death of what might happen. But with that, it's now time to get into our first bit of news for the night, and I thought we would start off with a fairly interesting one, because there has been a minor, well, actually, it's been a little bit more than minor. It's been a moderate training accident in Poland involving a Leopard 2A4. Apparently, in the middle of training, a Leopard 2A4 got caught by another tank, and the turret was literally lifted out of the tank with the crew in it. As far as we understand, none of the crew members were injured, but the damage to the Leopard 2A4 was quite significant, and from what we understand, it may never go to Ukraine due to the amount of damage it suffered. It appears that the, I guess you could say, the thermal exchanger on the barrel, I believe that is the term for it, it makes sure that there is a temperature imbalance within the barrel itself to make sure that all of the vapors from the shell leave the front. It's called a barrel evacuator, but I think there's a technical term for it. And we can also see some damage to the turret basket itself. It appears, however, that the crew compartments, as we can see, were not damaged, but I'm sure that was quite a shock to the crew as they were driving by another tank, and then they just got lifted straight up out of the hull of their tank and into the wide open air right above it. And of course, here is one final picture showing the damage to the barrel evacuator right there. And it does appear that this one sadly will not be making its way to the battlefield in Ukraine. But of course, it is training, and training accidents do occur. Many of y'all may know, if y'all ever follow U.S. military news, there are occasionally training accidents that actually involve the deaths of service members. And so training accidents like this one are not that uncommon, usually completely unheard of in U.S. training, because, you know, it didn't get anyone killed, so it wasn't really that big of news. But still, unfortunate to see that one of the Leopard 2A4s that is in Ukraine will not be making it to the front lines. But still bizarre to see, like, and it's weird to always think the turrets of these tanks really aren't in the tanks. They're just kind of sitting on top of them.
Huh. It's just sitting right there on top.
Yeah, it's just chilling there. So with that, we're going to be moving on from that little clip and on into the training fields of Ukraine, where we saw Oleksiy Reznikov actually taking a little bit of a drive behind the AMX-10 light tank. Now, I have to mute this because it is a rock version of La Marseillaise, which is the French anthem. Of course, the French aren't really on the greatest terms with a lot of people anymore, but they did give these AMX-10s to the Ukrainians. The AMX-10 is a highly capable and very maneuverable light tank that packs quite a punch with a 105mm gun. This thing could punch through the armor of a Russian main battle tank with relative ease. For what we know, it may be able to punch through practically all of them, except for maybe the T-90M and the T-90, or the T-80B VM. But still, they are pretty neat-looking light tanks, and we can see them, of course, sporting the Ukrainian colors. We can actually see the Ukrainian naval ensign, the Ukrainian flag, and the French flag. We can now see... And also, this is kind of cool. I bet a lot of people didn't know this, but the AMX-10 has hydraulic suspension. And you can actually see when they turn the tank on, the hydraulic suspension below it is lifting it up off the ground.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool, isn't it?
It's like one of those cars with hydraulics in it that used to like jumping around on the like city roads and stuff like that.
Yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is. Japanese tanks actually have this as a standard feature, like the Type 74. And we can see right there that they have an AMX-10 patch. We can now see the engine turning on. No white smoke that shows it has a bad filter, just a little bit of black smoke as it sputters to life. We can now see it racing across the fields and the road, once again showing off the high maneuverability of this light tank. And we can also see them blurring the nearby areas to make sure that there is no violations of OPSEC. Right here we can see the Minister of Defense, Zelenskyy Reznikov, driving one of them. And I gotta tell you, these things do look speedy. Of course, we haven't seen them tackling mud yet, but it is speedy on some, I guess you could say, firm, grassy ground. We can now see Zelenskyy Reznikov talking about the AMX-10. Probably talking about how good of a tank it is. Well, light tank it, for that matter. And we can now see him climbing out of it at the end of the clip. And that's all we have of the AMX-10 in the training fields of Ukraine right now. But really cool to see this armored high-speed duck driving around in the training fields of Ukraine. And, of course, pimping the ride. What's so weird about it is, and you never see it in action much, is that it does have the hydraulic, I guess you could say, suspension system. And so when you look at this thing, it can pretty much flatten itself onto the ground. It's like, that's just weird.
And why would you want to raise it all the way up like the other one we just saw?
Most likely for road clearance, just in case there's rocks or bumps on the road. That extra amount of clearance gives it the ability to kind of like drive over those without like scraping the bottom or getting stuck on anything. But it is really cool to see. Now, I don't know this about the AMX-10. Japanese tanks like the Type 74, which I'll show y'all right here, actually have a hydraulic suspension feature. You can see it right here, where the driver can manually adjust the amount, or I guess you could say the elevation of the tank, so that way if it's trying to conduct a hold down kind of firing position, even on a hill, it will be able to create a hold down position, which is very interesting about these tanks. I don't know if the AMX-10 can do something similar, where the hydraulic suspension can be adjusted wheel per wheel, or if it's just a set amount of, I guess you could say, suspension height for each wheel, and it's just either the tank is high off the ground or low off the ground, but still a great feature that will marginally improve the survivability and also, I guess you could say, the visibility of the tank when it's actually in combat. Still very cool to see, though, and quite a neat feature that very few tanks in the world actually have. So with that, we're going to be moving on from the duck. It's still really cool. I gotta say, while Macron hasn't really been doing a good job of representing France lately, the French do have a pretty interesting military with some very interesting tech, like this little AMX-10.
And it probably has like 3 or 4 reverse gears, right?
I think so. I
yes,
think it does.
it's got to.
You know what? Let's check. Let's see. Maximum speed. Wow, it actually goes really fast on the road. 53 miles per hour. And how much does this thing weigh again? Dang. With its largest protection kit, it weighs 22 tons, metric tons.
Dang.
And so it's quite a heavy vehicle to be going about 53 miles per hour. But let's see here. Let's go down. They've got to have the reverse gears on here somewhere. Let's see. It doesn't really say on this one. But still, a very interesting tank. A very cool one for that matter. And hopefully, it will be able to inflict a decent amount of damage on Russian armor once it's introduced to the front lines. And also provide the extra needed speed that the Ukrainians must have to be able to react to Russian armor threats. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news in the western area of Ukraine and on over into Russia. That's how I was having to think. I was like, there is some news in Russia, and there is in this town of Tyumen, which is actually on the eastern part of Russia, east of the Ural Mountains. Over the night, someone took a video of the city of Tyumen, and it appears that a decent amount of the city, or a large part of the industrial area, is engulfed in flames right now. We don't really know why or what's caused this and how much damage this has truly caused to the Russian war effort, but the city is engulfed in flames. Here's the video.
Смотрите, он еще больше
Quite a little fire.
в разные стороны.
Jeez.
Расходится трава.
Jeez. Jeez, man.
And what's all that on fire again?
We have no idea, really. It's just a large area in the center of Tyumen.
Там болото, и, видимо, не
It's like a whole city block's on fire.
I would say more than a city block. It's like a whole half mile is on fire over there. We have no idea really what this is. We assume that it would most likely be an industrial area, but we don't even really know that for certain. Right now, it's anyone's guess as to what this fire is in Tyumen and how much damage it's really causing to the city. With that, we're going to be moving on from the city of Tyumen and back into Ukraine, and now it's time for us to move right into our location unknowns. And we have quite a decent amount of them from each day, an equal number, 4 on each day. But day 418's location unknown news is more so vehicle based than anything. But in our first clip, we saw some torties that had been transported to the western training fields of Ukraine in training. And so here's the clip. And of course, we have to mute the chat music, but we can see right here them making their way across the training field. We can see that they have some foliage on the tank for camouflage, and we see the gunner down there playing a card game on his phone. It looks like he's learning a lot. We can also see some BMPs over there on the other road in the training field moving their way up. And that's the end of the clip. But I gotta say, what is more important than your gunner learning how to win the phone game right there? Now, that is incredibly important.
For sure, for sure.
For show. You know it. I mean, like, hell, one day, Matthew, he's going to see an ace of spades on the side of a Russian soldier's helmet, and he's going to go, hey, I know that from a card game. And then he's going to get it. But
Full house, tank blows up.
Dude, he's going to sit there, a royal flush, and then he's going to flush out the breech of the shell and everything. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip and on to the next one, where we saw the technical. And I have to be honest with you all, I don't really see a lot that was technical about the construction of this thing, but it is really cool nonetheless. And I'm also going to have to be completely honest with you all before we even play this video. I don't really have an idea of what kind of gun this is. This actually appears to be a gun, a 14.7mm gun that would be equipped in a BRDM2, but I can't really tell you that for certain. So I'm just going to let y'all watch the video of this guy going ham, and also this little fabric thing flapping around after the gun starts firing, but here's the clip. Dude, the fabric covering, once that gun fires, it's saying they're going, we're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue. But man, dude, imagine this thing being pulled up to the front line. You think you're getting fired on by a light tank, but no, it's just a guy with a Toyota Tacoma and a dream. But man, if anyone knows what kind of gun that is, I would love to know, because it's got to be the beefiest gun I've ever seen mounted onto a technical in the war so far. Serge Sigeli said it's a Dishka. No way! It can't be a Dishka. This thing's too big for a Dishka even. Let me type that in real quick. Actually, we'll wait for the video to end and then we'll look at the Dishkas. But we'll watch him keep firing the thing. I don't know what's up with the fabric covering on top of the truck, though. I don't know what that's serving. Maybe it's covering the sunroof or something similar? But dang, what a gun to mount onto a technical. And so it seems as though we've... some people are saying that it is actually Big Gun. We'll be pulling up Big Gun in a minute. I'm just kidding. But it can't be a Dishka, because the Dishka has a very distinct look. And we've seen Dishkas enough to know what a Dishka is and isn't. This thing is just too big to be a Dishka. It's probably like a 14.7mm or something similar, but it's massive. Let's check out a BRDM2's gun. BRDM2 gun. So let's see here if we can find one outside of the BRDM. So if you see what I'm talking about here, I'll try and get a better picture of it. You can see the barrel of the gun right there, and when you look at this one, Dang it, I gotta go get the link again. Hang on, y'all. When we look at this one, it appears to be a very similar gun, at least in its shape. It doesn't have any visible, I guess you could say, gas system on it that is kind of separate from the barrel. It looks a lot like it, but at the same time, I'm still not really sure. That tone guy said it's a 14.5 millimeter KPV. So let's type in KPV, and let's see if it is a KPV. Now, it may be a KPV. I actually would say that out of everything, this seems to be the most plausible one. But even still, it looks a little... No, wait a minute. Yep, that's the one, because it has that little cylinder-shaped, I guess you could say, receiver on the end of it. So yes, it is a KPV. Massive, though. A 14.5 millimeter gun. That is huge. It's larger than a 50 cal. I mean, like, that is crazy to mount onto the back of a technical. But good on them, and hopefully that kind of firepower will be able to support Ukrainian infantry. We're now going to be moving on to our next bit of location unknown news, where we can once again see the Twardies hitting the training ground. And of course, they're not tardy. They're right on time. And of course, the music and the copyright strike will most likely be on time as well. We can now see the Twardies driving in a line through the training field. And you know, speaking of copyright strikes, Matthew, would you believe it, but the age restriction was removed off of Sunday's fundraiser, and we never even got an email.
I wonder if they even checked like why it was age restricted in the first place, because I still don't know what it was.
I don't know what it was either, because they had it there and then they removed it. So I'm thinking that may have been a malicious age restriction request, and they sent it to review and flagged it because it may have been suspicious, but that still didn't help us out. So, you know, great, you know, wonderful to know that. But anyways, those were the Twardies on the training field, and you can see that there is a large amount of additional Ukrainian army that is in training and getting ready to go to the front lines. Of course, the Twardies are, I guess you could say, not that great of an upgrade compared to Western tanks, but it is still certainly an upgrade. Twardies are largely T-72s that have been heavily upgraded with more modern infrared sights, more modern night vision, and also more modern stabilizers, and really, for the large part, just Western tech in general. It still does operate, however, inside of a T-72's body, so it can only get so much better than a normal Russian T-72 or a Ukrainian T-72 that we're seeing on the lines right now, but it is still an upgrade and gives them a slight advantage over their opponents on the battlefield. And so hopefully we'll see these things on the front line soon, and of course beating the Russians left and right. We're now going to be moving on from that little clip right there, very interesting to see, and into our last one for day 418, where we saw a really cool picture of a Bradley in an unknown location on the move, but we can see that it has had a Ukrainian digital camo printed onto it.
Uh-oh, that's looking pretty nice.
Uh-oh, man, this thing be bulling. this thing be finna whip it. But it's really neat looking. We've never seen a Bradley painted into Ukrainian pixelated camouflage. So this does show, this is maybe our best indication that this one is certainly ending up on the front lines in Ukraine at some point in the future. We haven't really seen anything like this for other vehicles over the course of the war, where they actually have been painted up entirely into Ukrainian camo colors. I don't know if the United States is doing that as a courtesy or if this is just a one-off for the Bradleys, but this is a very interesting thing to see, is a Bradley painted up entirely in Ukrainian pixelated camouflage. And it'll be very interesting to see this thing on the front lines operating side by side with BMPs, T-80s, Leopard 2s, and Abrams in this kind of camouflage pattern. And it begs the question if everything else is going to get this camouflage pattern as well. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from day 418's location unknown news and on into day 419, where we also saw a new kind of armored car. From what we understand, these are actually Ukrainian built, and it's called a Varza-Redut. This thing is brand new, and it also looks incredibly cool. I mean, this thing is beefy, and we can actually see one at an arms expo right there, probably about a year or two earlier before the war began, but we can finally see the first iteration of its kind finally making it to the front lines, and crazily enough, this massive beast of an armored car, much like every others, has its origin in a normal, I guess you could say, chassis for a normal vehicle. And the vehicle that this armored car is based off of is the ZIL 130. And let me make sure it is the 131, correction. So let me go get the 131. And this is the original vehicle that this armored car is based off of, this one right here. Which is hideous.
You really can't tell it either. Like, it's the same chassis?
Same chassis.
Well, that's I would say a hell of an improvement.
That is a hell of an improvement. And also, why in the world does this thing look stupid? I mean, you know, Russian trucks or Soviet era trucks usually look kind of rugged. This one just looks stupid. This one looks like it picks its nose. I don't know why. It just gives me that feeling, but it kind of does. You know, I don't. Matthew's just sitting over there quietly. He's like, yeah. So I'm just going to write down notes on that one. But still, quite an ugly truck and quite the glow up. I guess that's the best way to say it. Quite the glow up for that one, and hopefully it has the same mine resistance and personnel protection that every other MRAP and armored car we've ever seen on the front line also provides. But still, a very interesting looking armored car, and the first of its kind to ever enter service in the Ukrainian army. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that bit of location unknown news and on into our next one, where we saw some Russian soldiers coming under some very heavy fire. Now, when you see the Russians moving up the field, we can see all of them highlighted in red. There's apparently a cluster of them over here in the tree line that we can't really see, but the rest of them that are moving down the tree line and towards this cluster are highlighted in little red dots. And so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And for one, the first times ever, we were seeing some proper spacing in between them for the most part. We can see the 10 of them advancing down the tree line, and we can now see the mortars landing directly along their column in a line. We can now see the mortars pounding the rear of their squad as they continue to try and move forward across the field. They're now also being hit by AGSs at the same time, and it appears that the decision has now been made to retreat off of the field. However, the forward part of the squad retreating off the field appears to have been knocked out. We can now see the remainder of the squad getting hit directly by a mortar shell as well, and so it appears that the entire squad may have bit the dust, but we can still see a decent amount of them on the move. It looks like maybe 8 of them have actually made it out of there, and so now we're going to have to stop those clips because those aren't necessarily the best, but we can see that a Russian squad was knocked out. John Underwood saying it's an old video. I don't know if it is or isn't because it kind of rang a bell, but I don't really remember seeing that one explicitly, and so we showed that video. I'm trying to think, is it old? And some people are saying it is, so I think it may have been an old one. Sorry about that. But we're now going to be moving on to our next clip, where we can see an accurate drone strike called in by Ukrainian artillery. Oh, we're going to have to mute that because the copyright music is juicy. But we can see some Russians moving on out in a group. We can also see 2 Russian soldiers moving back to the left side of the screen. We can now see the drones zooming out as they continue to call in the artillery. And the first round came in and got the 4 of them. Pretty interesting to see. We can now see some of these stragglers running over to the left side of the screen. And it appears that that group of 4 has been knocked out by this single precise strike. We can now see some movement of Russians up here near this red building. We can see one Russian soldier sitting there doing something on the road. Most likely trying to get in his weekly PT. And he's disappeared off the camera like some kind of a Houdini, and we see nobody there anymore. But it appears that that strike was fairly accurate, and that drone got the perfect coordinates called in on the first shot. Very rare, actually, because even though Ukrainian artillery is very accurate, usually able to land its second shot dead on the nail, landing the first shot dead on is something of a fluke, even for the Ukrainian artillery, which is already setting the precedent for accuracy worldwide right now. And so we can see that these guys did an impressive job, both with the drone spotting and also the artillery coordinates. We're now going to be moving on into our last bit of location unknown news for the day, where we saw the Russian losses over the past 24 hours. And of course, the losses...
Hey, 2 Bobcats.
Hey, let's go! Any comments on that? Oh, what? Nobody?
Oh, come on. We got to have a Bobcat comment.
Nobody put in a Bobcat comment. Not wait a minute.
Man.
KJ!
Hey! Look at that.
Jim Lundy throwing in another one. Hey, Edward! Hey! Nice to see
Oh, that's a JCB. That's an off-brand Bobcat.
Melissa Smith throwing in the deer. And we
look, it's Putin roasting on an open fire.
Oh, man. He's roasting on a spit. Man, that's rough. But anyways, good to see that there are Bobcats. They didn't show up at the top, though. Kind of sad. But still, 470 Russian soldiers have been schwacked over the past 24 hours, which is not that bad of a number, in all honesty. Of course, it is closest to the war's average instead of the last 2 months' average. So while it isn't up in the 800s, 900s, and thousands like we've been seeing over the past 2 months, it is consistent with the war's average and showing that Russian forces may be taking far less losses now than they were 2 months ago. We can also see that only one armored personnel carrier was destroyed over the past 24 hours. Very low in this number. They lose armored personnel carriers like people drink water, and so it's very weird to see that they only lost one of them. We also saw that 4 supply trucks were destroyed, which is a few supply trucks below the war's average as well. Only 1 tank was lost over the past 24 hours, once again below the war's average. We also saw that 6 artillery pieces were destroyed, one of the few numbers today rather than the infantry losses that we saw that was largely on par and on the war's average. We also saw that 6 drones were shot down, somewhat average depending on the day, and of course the 2 Bobcat skid steers, which is actually rare to see and very interesting to note. Now, the Russian losses are starting to decrease, largely because the only area of heavy fighting that we're seeing right now, where the Russians are taking considerable losses, is the battlefield in Bakhmut. It appears that there may have been some kind of a strategic or tactical pause within the Avdiivka area for this moment, as they are, according to the Ministry of Defense of the United Kingdom, moving forces out of that area and supplies and diverting them into the Bakhmut area because the battle is finally entering some of its terminal stages, most likely, and hopefully in the Russians' minds they'll be able to end that battle and then try and focus their attention on building a strategic reserve and also once again trying to push into Avdiivka or preparing for the Ukrainian counterattack that will most likely follow soon after. So that may be the reason why we're starting to see slower losses, or lower ones for that matter, and also it may also be the reason why we're seeing less armor losses, is because there isn't really a place nor an ability for the Russians to use massive amounts of armor at this point in the war, or at least during these battles that we're seeing evolving inside of Bakhmut, which are largely urban areas, and it's very difficult to use tanks there, and so they may be completely opting out of using tanks except for in very rare situations and instances. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from our Russian losses for the day on day 419, and we're now going to be moving on into the frontline news itself, starting from the Northeast and moving our way all the way down south. And so with that, we're going to be starting off on the Northeastern front, but before we do, we have to cover the polls. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks, and for our first question segment, we have 3 polls to address as usual. And the very first one says, a U.S. naval destroyer navigated through the Taiwan Strait without incident/interference. And what are your thoughts? 78% said, as expected, China wouldn't dare. 3% said unsure. 12% said that's great news. And 7% said, I'm surprised China didn't act. Now, if y'all remember, China was saying that they were going to try to stop and inspect ships going through the Taiwan Strait. And some people wonder if that meant they were going to try to stop U.S. military ships. I personally never thought they would, and obviously they haven't, because this one got through with no problem. The Chinese tried to act like they were trying to do something by saying they were monitoring it as it went through the strait. But so far, the Chinese have basically just put out a lot of strong statements and nothing actually in retribution for what we just did there. So pretty boss move by America. We went through there and showed them who was actually boss, and it was successful. So I'm with the 78%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I think it's hilarious that the Chinese are always talking this big. Everyone in the world talks this big talk about the United States, about how they're going to usurp the dollar, or or we're already off of the world stage, and they always sit there and go, "Oh, America, you know, they're nothing anymore. We could just stomp on them." And then a U.S. destroyer starts sailing right through the Taiwan Strait, the median line, pretty much, and they just go, well, you know, I would love to do something, but today is Tuesday and I have to go meet my daughter. I'm getting custody of her today. And they sit there and come up with something or some reason why not to respond. But I think that is very good to show, because it shows that there's really nothing but talk coming from Russia and China, and what they'll do or what their stance is against the United States. I would put money on it that we could have sailed an entire carrier group through the median line, through the Taiwan Strait, and they probably wouldn't have done anything about it. They certainly wouldn't have done anything about it at that point, because imagine trying to take on an entire carrier task force. That would be a very lofty goal for really anybody. Yeah, it really would be. It would be very suicidal for them. And so with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. Once again, the Chinese, much like the Russians, are all talk, no bite. And with that, we are on to the next poll.
All right. And the second poll says the U.S. will employ, quote-unquote, creative and challenging options to retrieve the jailed journalist in Russia. And what are your thoughts? 31% said it's just strong talk. 26% said U.S. may attempt to rescue. 19% said unsure. And 23% said they won't do anything. And I have to say the wording was a little bit interesting. They said creative and challenging options. And outside of diplomacy, it kind of sounds like they're suggesting something else, to me at least. But to go as far as to say that they're maybe going to attempt a rescue in the middle of Russia, that seems a little bit extreme. I'm going to say it's just strong talk, but it is definitely interesting that they made that statement and made that distinction. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's very interesting to hear that once again the Russians are going to try and put another American in prison. It honestly seems to me that they're trying to go hardball on this person again, so that way hopefully they can try and conduct another prisoner exchange with the United States and get someone like Victor Bout out again. But I don't really know if we have anyone in U.S. Prison any longer that is on the level of Victor Bout, so I don't really know who they would be trying to get out of prison this time. But I think that they're most likely going down that route again. As far as the United States can talk a lot of talk in this situation, but in reality, there's not really a lot we can do rather than go to war and try and release the guy by having the Russians unconditionally surrender. And by that point, nuclear missiles would be flying across the entire world from everyone involved, so you wouldn't really be getting that guy out of prison, or anybody out of prison for that matter. So, in my opinion, it's great talk, and it's always nice to have great talk, but there's really no way we can back that up. The best thing we could do is try and get the guy out of prison through another exchange. Beyond that, our hands are kind of tied unless we want to get into a direct confrontation with the Russians, which we've been trying to avoid by supporting Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that answers that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
The good news, real quick on that poll, is that the guy did make an appearance either, I think it was earlier today or yesterday. They had him in like the courtroom cage on the side like they do in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't look like he's in bad shape. So from the most part, it appears he hasn't been tortured or severely beaten or mistreated. So that's a good sign. But then again, Russia was withholding consular access from him for quite some time, I think for a week or two. So kind of interesting. Hopefully they don't decide to do anything stupid. But I think the U.S. is planning something in the background.
Do we have any pictures of this guy that we can look at real quick?
Yeah, if you pull him up, Evan, I think it's Gershkovich or something like that. I'm really not sure about his last name. Just say Evan, jailed in Russia.
I think this is the guy, isn't it? Nope. Let's
No.
see. U.S. journalist in Russia. I spelled journalist so wrong. Let's see. So this is the guy right here.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
so something very interesting to note, and these are a couple of things, is that in the former Soviet Union, it was taught commonly to interrogators that there should be no visible injury. And also, if you ever listen to North Korean spies that have defected to the West, they also say that one of their main things that they do is ensure that there is no visible bodily damage to someone. And so while he could be bruised to hell and back on his chest and anywhere where there's clothes, or even on his arms, they will not visibly damage his face or any part of his arms that will be visible on camera, because then it shows that they're torturing the guy. It doesn't really look like he's in bad shape, though, like with his disposition or anything like that. So I would guess that he may have not been tortured a great deal. He may have just been in prison, maybe like hit once or something like that, but nothing too severe. But then again, that is something we always have to keep mind of, is that we can only see his face and parts of his forearms. We can't really see anything else, so we don't know if they're pulling off like a North Korean tactic where they beat the guy silly and he's black and blue under that shirt, and then the parts of him that are visible they made sure not to touch. But let's look at some...
He does appear pale, though. Like, he's very pale looking, at least in that one photo.
Yeah, he does appear pale, but he doesn't really appear to be in bad spirits, actually, which is interesting to see. So it may show that he has not been beat. We can also see the press there, 1 million press members there, and we can see him once again smile. Dude, right there, why in the world does that look like it's a meme? Like, you could crop that and turn it into a meme right there. But yeah, it actually doesn't look like the guy's been abused that much, and it may be because it's such a high-profile case, and it's getting...
Wait. His wrist, somebody pointed out his wrist has some handcuff marks on it. It does look like it does right there on that left wrist.
Yes.
Not too bad, though, because a lot worse could happen. But, we can't see under his shirt. We don't know if something's, like, happened to him otherwise or anything like that. But for the most part, he's in better shape than he could be.
He's in fairly good shape, and also another reason why they may not be beating him up, and I'm kind of leaning in the direction that Matthew is in, that he's probably not getting beat that badly, is because it's such a high-profile case where the United States, the entirety of the United States is, of course, watching it. You see it's here on the Associated Press, and so they don't really want to beat the guy up or injure him a lot, because it may be that he's exchanged for someone soon within weeks, and then he gets back and he starts telling horror stories about how he's treated there. As far as I recall, Brittany Griner didn't have any horror stories to tell of her own. Oh, great, Nad. We're getting off of this then. But Brittany Griner didn't really have any horror stories to tell of her own, and the reason why these two people may not be treated as poorly as other folks have been in the past, it is because they're such high-profile, I guess you could say, figures in the media right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that, in my opinion, fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next poll says the FBI arrested 2 individuals for operating a Chinese police station in New York. And what are your thoughts? 90% said good, it's about time, and that is an overwhelming majority that said that. 4% said unsure, 3% said it is what it is, and 2% said not good, it's uncalled for. Now, we do know for a fact that we've known about this police station in China, or not in China, the Chinese police station in New York for about a year now, and the U.S. really hasn't done anything about it. But now they've suddenly decided to arrest the 2 guys who were the leaders of the police station. And apparently they were going around acting as Chinese agents on the streets of New York, trying to harass Chinese nationals that were visiting the U.S. And also conducting counterintelligence. So quite interesting. The U.S. isn't the only place they've tried to set up a foreign police station that's not registered with the government. So it's good to see that they're finally taking action. But Enforcer, what say you?
Okay, we posted this on the Twitter, so I got to peep the Twitter.
Peter, the Twitter's here.
So we got to go to the profile. We got to scroll down, and we got to find. Here we go. Here's the picture. And
There
look
they
at
are.
him. I love
Loyal
how,
party members.
I love how it was such an impromptu kind of like setup that they just have this little plastic banner back here that they probably got printed out for like $60 at the local print shop.
Yeah. It's like, who printed that?
And
like,
also-
didn't they get suspicious?
And also, why in the world is this not like a central party like service station? This is the Fuzhou police overseas service station. Why not from Shanghai or Beijing? You know, because Fuzhou isn't as like prestigious or important in China as the other provinces or cities for that matter, so why them? But still, I do love all of the loyal party members here, even wearing some kind of a red cloth on their necks to show their allegiance to the party, I guess. But you know, it's wild to think that the Chinese did try and come over to the United States and set up an illegal police station, or not really a police station, they call it an overseas service station, to pretty much just harass Chinese nationals that are living here in the United States. Obviously a violation of our sovereignty as the United States, and also quite a bit of gall on their end to think that this will succeed. Now, considering that these people are pretty much committing some kind of a, I would say this would fall under, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, some form of espionage here in the United States, I would say we should throw the book at them, give them all at least a minimum of around 50 years in prison for trying to pull this off. And then if the future ever comes around, maybe exchange them for someone important. Right.
You know, the weird thing is they didn't charge them with espionage charges. They charged them with conspiring as a foreign agent of a foreign government, which is a completely different charge. I'm not really sure what kind of sentence that carries with it, but I don't think it's as serious as espionage.
I think honestly though, we should have charged him with espionage, because doing something like this may as well be saying in the 1930s that Nazi Germany set up a police station in the United States under the Berlin Police Department or something. That's on that level to me right now. So it's like we ought to throw everything we can at these people and put them in prison for about 50 years, the entire lot of them. But still, with that, I hope we address that poll fairly well. It's still crazy to think that they're going to come over here and act like they can just open up an illegitimate police station. I want the NYPD to go to Beijing and open up a fake police station there, just to tit for tat. But with that, I hope we address that fairly well, and we are on to, I believe that was the last poll, so I think we're actually on to the questions.
And yes, that was our last poll, so we are moving on to our super chat questions. And real quick, let me grab a bot real quick in the chat. There, he's gone. But anyways, our first super chat goes to Miss Disa, who puts in a very generous $100 super chat. And thank you very much, Miss Disa, for the support. She says, the Sunday fundraiser can accept long after the stream ends. And how many weeks back can viewers donate to support Ukraine charities?
And I thank you so much for the huge amount of support, Miss Disa. Of course, we rely on that support to keep the gears running, the lights on, and everything behind the scenes. And I thank you so much for keeping us in mind so that way we can continue to do all the work we do. Also, to answer that question the best we can. It can accept donations after it ends, but I think that only lasts for about 24 to 48 hours after the fundraiser officially closes. It doesn't last forever, as far as I understand. So you can't go back to a fundraiser like 2 or 3 weeks ago and fundraise to it, because we actually put a very limited time window on them. And I'll actually pull up something for y'all real quick for y'all to see about that. So let me go to the earn section. Let me go to the giving. And so let me pull this over to y'all's screen. So here's all the fundraisers. We can only have 50 of them now. We actually reached the cap. So whenever we run a new fundraiser, we have to delete an old one. But the accounting is still there. YouTube is still managing the account. But this is the one that ran. You got up to 18.7. It went up another $200 after we counted it.
Hey.
Dang.
That's nice.
But this is the fundraiser right here. And when I go to edit it and all that stuff, you can see the EIN of the fundraiser. It's, of course, registered through GuideStar. And then the other thing is that when we set the goal, we can set how long this fundraiser runs. So we always set them to where they only exist on the stream. They can never be accessed after the stream is over. So it only existed from the 16th, which was that night, to the 17th, which was the next day. I believe, based off of the start date and end date right there, it begins on that day and it ends as soon as the next day begins. So as soon as 12 a.m. hits, the fundraiser officially closes. But I have seen people, like the total shows, that have been able to put in several hundred more dollars into these fundraisers after the fundraiser officially closes. So it seems as though the window is 24 to 48 hours after the fundraiser closes. But of course, that is an estimate on my end. Y'all are always free to experiment with that and see if the fundraiser, you can send in funds to a fundraiser 3 days or 4 days after the fundraiser ends, but I don't think it'll last much longer than that. And of course, I hope that does answer the question fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Miss Disa, for keeping us in mind, because, of course, we rely on everyone's support to help this thing to keep on rolling. And without y'all's support, we would never be able to make this possible. And so if you do enjoy our channel and you want to support us, Super Chats are the only way that we are able to be supported. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and our next one is a $20 super chat from none other than Charlie Nikhil. And thank you very much, Charlie, for the support. He says, as part of the POW swap negotiations last September, 5 proven Ukrainian commanders from Mariupol must remain in Turkey until the war is over. That seems ridiculous, but Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support, Charlie. And I would have to agree with you. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. That would be that's like the Germans and the Americans possibly doing a prisoner exchange in the Second World War, and then the Germans go, "We will give you back your people, but some of them have to go to Switzerland." It's like, why? Well, what kind of sense does that make? That makes no sense. So I don't really understand what exactly it is that made them say that. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But those guys are kind of lucky when you really think about it. They get to just kind of hang out in Turkey, and they're not being, from what I understand, detained or put in a house arrest or anything like that in Turkey. Obviously, they don't have a home down there, so it'd be hard to be in house arrest. They're just kind of hanging out down there. I don't really know how that works, though. I don't know if the Ukrainian government is giving them some kind of a pension or a stipend, like they've retired to stay there, or something similar. But I just don't really understand why they sent some of the Azov commanders down to Turkey and they're just hanging out there. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. But then again, much like the World War II analogy, Turkey is being viewed by Russia and Ukraine right now kind of as a neutral party, although they're obviously pro-Ukrainian and they do supply the Ukrainians with a large amount of arms and equipment. The Russians and the Ukrainians also agree that they're kind of a neutral party in a way. And so I guess that's the reason why they went down there. But to be honest with you, it still doesn't make all that much sense to me, to be honest with you. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Charlie. I hope that does address that fairly well. And once again, I have to say this, since we're talking about Turkey. Turkey is kind of in a weird spot right now, if many of y'all have been following world news. But if you ever think, what the hell is wrong with Turkey? Look at their history, at least over the past 100 years exactly, since about 1921 up till the present day, and you'll see that Turkey has had a very interesting history, and it appears that they're kind of going through a phase right now. This phase may fizzle out after maybe another decade or so, or it may not, but it is certainly an odd time for Turkey, at least historically over the past 100 years or so, after Ataturk created the Republic of Turkey. So with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the Frontline news itself.
All right, and our last one goes to Mark, General of the LSA. He puts in a $170 super chat, and that is very generous of you, Mark, and thank you so much. He says, I'm still paying off my officer's commission, LOL. And also, Mark didn't ask for it, but we're also going to grab a live chat question after this as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support, Mark. Of course, I thank everyone who helps us to keep this thing running, because the fundraisers are incredible and knock them out of the park. But of course, we always thank everyone for supporting this channel, because through y'all's support, we are able to keep this thing running. And I thank you so much once again, Mark, for coming up with some reason to support this channel and help us keep it running, because of course it means a lot to us, and it also helps everything behind the scenes to keep on going. We are actually graduating college here in about 2 weeks, actually, at this point. And we'll be moving on into our summer break in between college and law school, and then both of us will be entering law school at the exact same time. And I've got to thank you so much once again for supporting us, so that way we can keep everything like that going on in the background. And of course, support the coffee fund, the donut fund, the nitric acid Coke fund, and everything else in between. But thank you so much once again, Mark. You truly are a general of this Lee Spring Army, helping to blow away those fundraisers, absolutely carrying this Sunday's fundraiser, and also helping us to keep this thing rolling while we're on air the rest of the week. And so with that, we're going to be grabbing a live chat. And what is our live chat, Matthew?
All right, and our live chat goes to The Relaxation Signals, and also shout out to Canada, by the way. They said, what about China and Russia making their own currency, meaning BRICS?
That is an interesting thing. We've actually talked about that before on this channel. Also, no particular reason, but a big shout out to Canada. Pretty cool place, pretty cool people. Hey, rep the set, rep the set. I wonder, what do Canadian Crips and Bloods wear? Like, do they wear like the bandanas and everything, or do they like? I don't know what they would wear up there. It's like, is that?
They're very polite.
They're very polite.
There's none of that street talk going on.
Yeah, they're very polite. They come up to you, Matthew, and they go, I'm whipping the blocky or something like that. But anyways, to answer the question about the BRICS currency, or at least the BRICS coming together to try and outdo the U.S. currency. It is something that's been circling in the news a lot, but a lot of the news outlets that have been circling that around are trying to hype up the fear of the U.S. dollar being overdone, or outdone, finally. And the fact of the matter is that just can't happen. The BRICS alliance is an alliance of Russia, China, India, South Africa, and Brazil combined. And they're trying at this moment, that's actually where the abbreviation BRICS comes from. It comes from Brazil, which is the B. I believe it's actually the B and the R. I'm trying to think about that. BRICS. No. The B is Brazil, the R is Russia, the I is India, the C is China, and then the S is South Africa. So those are all the members of the BRICS Alliance, and that's what the abbreviation stands for. When you combine all of their combined GDPs together at this moment, it still falls, I believe, a few $1 trillion short of the combined, just of the total United States GDP of around $24 trillion. And so just in purchasing power of the entire BRICS Alliance combined, they don't outdo the United States. And not only that, they certainly do not outdo all of the countries around the world that have some of the largest economies out there that still trade on the dollar. For example, the entire European Union, as well as the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Japan, and South Korea. Just Japan alone being a country that exchanges or trades on the US dollar, they throw the Western, I guess you could say, sphere of influence, trillions of dollars, about $6 trillion above the entirety of the BRICS Alliance. And so while they're trying to create some kind of a dominant currency, the fact of the matter is that there's just not enough spending power behind it to really get it off the ground. And even if they try and draw in other countries, for example, East African countries, Middle Eastern or Central Asian countries, there just isn't countries in those areas with large enough GDPs and enough spending power that it ever comes into play where it can actually challenge or usurp the US dollar as the dominant currency around the world. So it is interesting to see that they're trying that, but it's a project that has largely failed right out of the gate. It's kind of like one of those dirt bike rallies where, that gate's not open yet, and they go, okay, go! And then the dirt bikes floor it straight into the gate. The gate doesn't flip down, and they all just face plant, face forward. That's pretty much what this, I guess you could say, currency attempt is already at this point. But with that...
I will say, though, probably never going to be a quote-unquote BRICS currency, but we do need to keep an eye on China trying to replace the US dollar as an international standard. I don't think they'll ever personally accomplish it, but they are definitely trying to do that. And the United States doesn't need to sleep on that. They need to make sure that we're taking steps to make sure the US dollar stays the reserve around the world.
And I would certainly agree. And I think that one thing that we definitely need to focus on to make sure that the Chinese alone never really get the ability to actually challenge the US dollar is to befriend the Indians, which is already happening right now. And they're one of the loosest members of the BRICS alliance. And I don't even know why they went and, I guess you could say, agreed to this currency plan, because at the same time, Chinese and Indian border guards are beating each other over the head with literal sticks right now in the Himalayas, and the Indians are befriending the United States because they're scared of the Chinese. So I don't really know why they agreed to do something like that, but as long as we can get the Indians or the Sri Lankans on our side, we can largely stop the Chinese from growing their Belt and Road project, otherwise known as the Silk Road program, into Central Africa, the Middle East, and also East Africa, where they create a pretty much unstoppable sphere of influence that would surround the Indian Ocean. If we can do something to stop that, we would probably never see this currency attempt or the Chinese attempt to usurp the United States as being the leading country in the world to actually come to fruition. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Mark, for paying officer dues, which are not a thing. You're a member, you're a general, of course, because of all of the support that you've given to the fundraiser. But I thank you so much once again for always keeping this channel in mind and always making sure that we're supported so that way we can keep the thing running. Because of course, we count on that support entirely. That's the only way we keep the channel running, which is of course very unique to this channel. I think we're the only channel on YouTube that runs that way. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from the question segment. I hope we answered that one fairly well. Once again, huge shout out to Canada while I sit here and try and look at something. I'm sorry, I need to steal your automobile, eh? But with that, we're now going to be moving on from the question segment and on into the Northeastern news, and specifically the frontline information we've gotten over the past 48 hours. So we're going to be updating the map real quick, and from what we understand, of course, got you, thank you. Over the past 48 hours, we've seen, obviously, no frontline developments to speak of. This is not shocking. Of course, the Northeastern area seems to be one of the quietest areas of the front line, although at one part of the war, it blew everyone's heads up, literally, because the Ukrainians were able to cover about 60 miles in every direction in under 72 hours, which was lightning fast speed compared to any historical standard. But, of course, we've seen a little bit of activity occurring here in the Northeast. It doesn't really represent any frontline changes or any kind of prevailing actions from either side, but we did see the 10th Mountain Brigade in the area hitting the Russians. And hit them they did. They hit them like a dad that's come home drunk and is not happy with his job. And we can see him.
Oh, man.
We can see them dropping a bomblet onto the BMP. It explodes, and it appears that while it didn't go into the crew compartment, some shrapnel did, and we could see some smoke and a little bit of flame coming out of the crew compartment. We now see them dropping a bomblet on a squad of Russians, and it looks like the bomblet was able to claim a quad of Russians. That means 4. Actually, it may have been able to claim more than 4.
Yeah, we're not good at math, but
No, we're
it's
not
somewhere
good at
around that
math.
number.
We're still working on the addition and the subtraction part. We can now see them dropping another bomblet on the Russians, it exploding right in front of them. And we can't really tell if that got anyone. It looks like it may have just popped near them and freaked them out, but it looks like it may have landed on another side of a small berm. We can now see, oh goodness, anyone order hamburger helper? Oh, goodness. Oh, my gosh. Well, with that, that's the end of the clip. And
Man,
it appears,
everybody loved your joke at the beginning of the segment.
really, everyone loved it?
I guess you could say they loved it in a way.
Well, you know, it's good to know that people like that one. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from this clip. Quite an interesting one, once again showing that the 10th Mountain Brigade is certainly using those drones to an unbelievable degree in the Northeastern area. And while they're not directly engaging the Russians with their infantry, they are engaging the Russians with the drones, which appears to be doing even more damage than the infantry could. We're now going to be moving further down the line and towards the area of Zalaman, which is what you call someone at the market who's trying to rip you off. Oh, you're just a Zalaman. Anyways, at Zalaman today, we saw that the Ukrainians were able to take out a Russian BMP. And let's hear if there's Chad music. No, there's no music at all, actually. We can see that the drone is on low battery, so they're finding this BMP just in the nick of time. We see them going over some kind of a Russian outpost down there, but it appears they have their eyes on a bigger prize, this $500,000 BMP that is currently crossing a railroad. Correction, it says BMP in the title. That appears to actually be an MTLB, which is around $250,000 to $300,000. We can now see the drone going in, static overtaking the screen, and now you can see the silent picture, the like card pop up where it goes,
"Oh no, the dreadful orcs have been roasted in their own fire."
or something like that. But anyways, quite an impressive FPV drone. It looks like it did hit its mark, and great to see that the Ukrainians are always using the drones to an unbelievable degree, and of course, changing the course of warfare for the rest of history. This is the first war where we have ever seen drones used to such a heavy degree on such a small but such a damaging scale, and this is certainly something that Western countries like the United States, Britain, France, Germany, and so on are looking at and taking notes on to make sure that they can revolve their doctrine around the, I guess you could say, proper way to fight a war, at least in the modern age. We're now going to be moving on into the Crimea area, where in Crimea today, we did see that a Mr. S has gone up in smoke. It appears that the Ukrainians hit this at some point off camera, and we don't know if a Russian is playing this or if a Ukrainian is, but the music just busted my eardrums out,
Yeah,
and we can see
too.
we can see the remains of the breech of the gun. Of course, the Mr. S is literally just a Mr. B artillery piece that has been put inside of a turret of a T-72, well, a massive turret put on top of a T-72 hull, and we can see that this thing's been scattered around, kind of like a Lego set. Assembly was not included, disassembly was included. We can also see some anti-tank mines just lying around without detonators, a Euro 4320 that has had better days, and an engine block. I don't know what that was a part of. It looks like it may have been something. Maybe the... And wait a minute, hang on. That actually looks kind of like the transmission behind the engine. So that we may be looking at the back of the the Mr. S right now. And it looks like the fire was so hot that it may have actually melted the transmission. Oh, man,
I think that's just the engine.
Are you sure?
I think so. It looked like an engine mounted sideways.
Mr. S engine. Let's see if we can find... Well, let's just type in a T-72 engine because we'll probably find it easier that way. So T-72 engine images, and let's go down here, and I mean, like, it kind of looks like it.
Yep, it's mounted sideways. That's probably it.
I don't know. I swear that it's got to be the transmission. Let's pull up the T-72 transmission, and let's see what we got. Transmission, because it'd be weird, you know. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is the engine. That's bizarre, though, because it looks like it's right at the back of the tank where the vents are. And usually, I believe, if I'm correct, the T-72s are driven on the rear axle. So that's kind of bizarre to see that the engine, at least from what we're looking at, is where the rear axle is. But still, pretty interesting note. We're learning something new here about how the interior, or well, how the guts of a T-72 work. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from that interesting little bit of a melted engine block at the very back of the Mista, and we're now going to be moving on further down the line, past Kremenna, and on into the area of Verkno-Kamyanka, near the large oil refinery just a few miles out of Lysychansk, where we saw today the Russian tractor burned to the ground. And of course, when they say tractor, they mean one of those ghetto little, like, tiller things that have a motor attached to tires, and there's no plow, so they just use it as, like, a go-kart. But we can see them dropping some bomblets on it, and for the Russians, this is top tech at this point of the war. You can now see a bomblet dropping near the fuel tanks, setting them alight, and also spilling out all of the gas. I guess you could say that there's not going to be anyone asking where the gas is around this place. It's on the ground. So we can see another
You
bomb.
can say that again.
We can see another bomblet dropping. It appears to have ignited the gas vapors, but it hasn't caught the gas on fire itself. And then right now, Matthew, the Russians are going to come back outside and see all of this gone and go, "Hey, do you know where some gas is, Blid?"
What makes you think that, a Russian?
Oh, what makes you think that, eh? I don't know of any gas. And we can see the sad little tiller thing burning up in the middle of the gas fire. And I don't think the Russians will have any transportation like that any longer. Yep, that thing's toast. It's cooked. And it's just in the middle of this destroyed village. No Russian to be seen. It's like they just left this thing here and never came back for it. But still, great to see that they were able to get one, and the Russians will never be able to use it again, although that thing probably only costs like $500. So not really a massive monetary loss, but for that Russian squad, I bet you they're going to be feeling it as they have to walk miles back to their base. With that, we're now going to be moving on down into the Bakhmut area, and now it's time to get into the PvP Battle Royale that Bakhmut has turned into. Bakhmut, as far as we understand it, is still largely a slaughter fest. Both sides are, of course, in a grueling battle right now for control of the city, and it does appear that over the past really the past 48 hours, the Russians have been advancing in two directions, in the south and also in the north. The southern advance appears to have occurred 48 hours ago, and still has not really crossed the railroad itself, which is a major deal. As long as they're not crossing that railroad in large numbers and in a large amount of areas, the Ukrainians will be able to hold down this area fairly well. However, we did see that the northern area, over the past 48 hours as well, and I'll have to getting on up until the present day, it appears that the Russians have been able to take another city block in this area as well, and once again, this is where we assume the largest number of Russian forces will be attacking from. They do have a completely unobstructed area across the railroad tracks here in the northern end of the city that they are able to push a large amount of forces over, and they are able to take on Ukrainian forces block by block, trying to isolate them and then either force them to retreat or forcing them to surrender and then taking additional city blocks. We're probably seeing the largest Russian concentration for that reason in this area, while of course heavy battles are still occurring over the railway station. The last update we heard, which was days ago, is that the Ukrainians were able to reclaim one of the two elevator shafts in the building, the Russians still controlling the other one literally 3 feet over. But we haven't heard anything since. And of course, exact details like that in the battle are usually an OPSEC violation. So while we share that one detail, because it was probably such a fleeting moment, either for both sides, we don't want to get into the exact details of what's going on at that railway station at that moment. However, it does appear that the Ukrainians are slowly withdrawing from the town day by day. And of course, we expect that eventually, within weeks or maybe even a month's time, the Ukrainians will withdraw completely from the city of Bakhmut, but not after they inflicted nearly 30,000 Russian dead and also destroyed hundreds and maybe even over 1,000 armored personnel carriers in the course of this battle. It has been the deadliest battle for the Russian forces over the course of the war, and the largest ever battle to occur in both the number of days that it's taken, or the number of months that it's taken, the number of forces that have been involved, and also the, I guess you could say, press attention that has been involved in this battle. This has gotten more press about the Battle of Bakhmut than the Battle of Mariupol ever had, and the Battle of Mariupol was probably the most covered battle that ever occurred in the war up until this point. And so with that, we're now going to be moving into the frontline news itself. Not, of course, not into the city yet. We have to cover the northern front news near Mykolaiv, where we saw the Ukrainians destroying a small Russian position on the far end of this front. Credit to the 30th Mechanized Brigade for getting this hit. We can see the Russians setting up a small infantry mortar. It appears to be maybe an 81mm or a 60mm. They're now hanging the charge and dropping it. It appears that it was actually a misfire. So now we can see the Russians clambering around and trying to figure out why it was a misfire. And then right now, man, I think this guy's going, "Did you put any gas in it, please?" He's like, "I don't really know how this thing works." Oh! And they're gone.
Oh, man.
They're
Jaga,
gone.
jaga.
Oh, wait, no, they're not gone. They fell to the ground. They're getting up, and they're now running away because they know this thing's about to get hit. They're like, "Oh, blade, go for the trees." But we're in the trees, blade. So you can see the next shell landing. I can't really tell if that one landed in the pit. It's very hard to see where the pit is.
Oh, they're stunned.
We now see this guy putting tree limbs on top of his bunker to try and make it more camouflage, but it appears that that's to no avail because they already know where they are. We now see this guy here just kind of hanging out down there, and we're gonna.
Oh, he's having problems for sure.
He's having a little bit of an issue down there. It appears that he was enjoying too much strawberry jam. But with that, that's the end of that clip, and it appears that they were able to get that mortar position in the far north. Of course, not going to change an entire battle, but still inflicting losses on Russian forces, and most likely that mortar will be included in tomorrow's casualty report, at least for the artillery losses. With that, we're moving on down towards the area of Krasnohora, where we got a very interesting picture. We don't know how, but at this late phase in the war, usually with tosses being used at least 6 miles behind the lines, or 5 miles behind the lines, the Ukrainians were somehow able to capture an entire TOS-1A thermobaric flamethrower, and they are now bringing it back into the rear lines. Don't know how, don't know why, but quite a catch for the Ukrainians at this point. I mean, like, you don't see a lot of tosses being captured. I don't know how the Ukrainians are going to use this because the Ukrainians do not use Toss thermobaric launchers, but still quite interested to see they were able to grab another one from the Russians and make sure that they're not going to be able to use it again. With that,
Did they get the munitions with it, or was it just the equipment?
Well, considering that we can't really see through the missile tubes, because the missile tubes are just hollow tubes, so if there is no rocket inside of it, you can see clean through it. And considering that there's no light coming through it, and we can't see to the other side, that may show that it actually came with the ammunition included.
Oh, that'd be a real catch then if it came with it.
Oh, yeah. You know, the Ukrainians, man, they're going to be sitting there, me and the Russians thought this was stuff. Watch this. And they just level a city block in Bakhmut with this thing. But still, with that, we're going to be moving on from that clip and actually into the city itself. First on the western ridgeline near Yahidne, where we saw the Wagner unit in action. The Wagner unit is Russia's finest. And let me make sure to unmute the audio so that way, you know what? I think we might have to do it, Matthew. I think we're going to have to risk it because the music just makes it tonight. It makes this clip. It's the Wagner unit, the finest unit that the Russians have ever had. It's their mercenary unit, the guys who get things done, and nothing can stop them, not even hills, except for this one. Here's the video. I don't care if it's copyrighted, we gotta play. So you see the Wagner climbing the hill, but this idiot up here doesn't realize that it's such a high elevation he really can't. This one actually right here. So he falls and he just starts rolling and he keeps going. He's rolling all the way down the hill. So the other guy here,
bomblet practice bliot.
The other guy, he also starts sliding down as well. And now
this is when you know your army's in really good shape. They can't even go up a hill.
Yeah, you know they're in great shape when they can't do anything like this. That guy, man, probably, I mean, like, with that much weight on him, I don't know, maybe he broke a rib or something doing that, because watch this again without the music. He gets up, he falls, he starts rolling. I mean, like, man, he doesn't
He went down like a brick.
Yeah, he went down like a rock. And then this guy here, he's also trying to get down, but you can tell he's about to flip, like, head over, like, backwards and just crack his skull open. He didn't. But what a joke. And it doesn't really look that steep from here. It kind of is, though. But why in the hell would they even choose to try and climb over this area, considering it's that steep? Just go to a different spot or something. You know, that was a little dumb on them. But anyways, that's the end of that clip. And of course, Wagner's finest right there in action on the Western Ridge. We're now going to be moving on from that clip and on into the city itself, where we saw a very unfortunate sight. Of course, every once in a while the Russians do claim a victory, and sadly we got to see one of Ukraine's finest vehicles, one of the rarest ones that we've seen over the course of the war, get captured by Russian forces. It was a great tragedy. They've already painted Z's onto it, and it appears that they will be using it, and we actually have a video of it being taken away by Russian forces on tonight's news. And so they captured an M113. Here's the clip.
Oh.
Now they're going all out in this thing.
Yeah, it'll probably last
2
weeks.
A week. Yeah, 2 weeks, maybe a week, and then it'll break down and they don't have any spare parts for it, so they just abandon it. The reason why they painted a Z on this thing, of course, I would imagine the Russians wouldn't be stupid enough to actually try and use this thing, considering there's no way for them to really repair it. The reason why they probably painted a Z on this thing was for propaganda reasons. But this is like the worst propaganda victory I've ever seen. The Ukrainians are capturing TOS-1 thermobaric launchers. They're capturing some of Russia's finest tanks. There was a T-90 spotted here in the United States at a Louisiana rest stop. That's how good the Ukrainians are doing in capturing armored vehicles and some of Russia's best equipment that we've seen on the front lines. And the Russians making a huge deal out of capturing an armored box that we sent over from the United States that's at least 50 or 60 years old at this point. It's like, yeah, it's a great vehicle for the Ukrainians because, you know, there's a way for them to repair it and run the thing, so it's not that far off from an MTLB. But for the Russians, it's like, this is a dead end for them. Yeah, great, they painted the Z on it, and that's about it. There's nothing more they can do with this thing. Because if the transmission goes, and it just stops dead in the middle of the road, that's it. There's no way for them to fix it or even move it, and they're just going to leave it there. So, pretty funny to see they were able to get one, and they're making a big deal about it. And this is one of the few times we've ever seen a Russian video come out of them capturing anything, and it's probably the most underwhelming thing that they could ever capture. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip and on into the next one in northern Bakhmut, where we saw that, that a Ukrainian was fixing a car tire in the middle of Bakhmut. And it sounds like he pulled over in Chicago and fixed his tire. And so with that, here's the clip. We can hear firefights going on in the distance. Now let's see a Ukrainian soldier on the move as heavy firefights go on around the rest of the city. We now see them making it to the car with a camo net on it. We now see them replacing the tire in the middle of the firefight. Seems like the firefight's died now as they're still replacing the tire.
Знімай. Так, дивимося, що там в ньому.
They're now taking the tire off. Now putting a new one on. Now see them putting it back on. Make sure to inflate the tire.
Забираємо її з собою.
Now putting everything back up. Firefight starting to pick up again in the background. Artillery landing maybe 100 yards away. Several hundred yards away, actually.
Петь. Зараз, блядь, чуєш? Погнали.
Jeez. Now see them running on the tires, throwing it in the back of the car. Closing the back and now running back to their position. They're in the building now. And now posing for the camera in classic Ukrainian fashion. But still, great to see that they were able to exchange that tire. But what's more important than them changing the tire was the sound of the firefights going on in the background. And throughout most of that video, it was intense. You could hear massive firefights going on. Of course, this was filmed just the other day, so these firefights could be occurring in the northern part of the city. They could be occurring in the train station. They may be happening in both places at the same time, and they're hearing the noise of both of the firefights going on in both ends of town. And once again, showing how heavily fought over the city of Bakhmut is at this point. We're now going to be moving on from that clip, once again letting us hear the intensity of the battles going on, and on into our next clip where we saw the tank that could not be recovered. This was the first Russian T-80 BVM that was ever captured by Ukrainian forces in the Sumy area last year during about March of 2022. The T-80 BVM is one of Russia's finest main battle tanks, one of the most modern main battle tanks that they are able to actually use. The T-14 Armata, of course, is out of the picture because there's only pre-production prototypes. And then there's a few production series, but those are mired with issues, and the Russians are not comfortable with sending those out to the front lines. We can see here the T-80 BVM called Bunny stuck right there, and funnily enough, the Ukrainians, this was days ago actually, this video was published today, so it's new, but the actual footage is from many days ago, about over a week and a half ago. The Ukrainians that filmed the tank getting hit were under this bridge right here, so we're actually looking at this from the air. We can see Ukrainian supply vehicle moving away, and then we can see a shell explode right near the T-80 BVM. Sadly, the T-80 BVM Bunny was never able to be recovered, and it actually was destroyed in the spot near the train station, and it still sits there to this day. But once again showing the dangers that muddy ground like this can pose to main battle tanks, and also showing that a Russian tank finally succumbed to Russian fire and was destroyed by their own forces a year after it fell into Ukrainian hands. We're now going to be moving on from that clip and on into our next one, nearer to the train station again, where we got an update from Bakhmut. Now, I would like to say, while I say this is near the train station, this marker is not accurate whatsoever. This could be anywhere in the city. Whenever we get, I guess you could say, videos like these, we always make sure to misrepresent where the marker is for OPSEC reasons. It is in Bakhmut, but not here. And so here's the clip. Glory to Ukraine. Today is the 18th of April, 2023. We're located in the Bakhmut fortress. Bakhmut defense forces are doing everything possible and impossible for the fortress to hold. The enemy seems to have gone mad today, sending wave after wave of assault groups. Defense forces are heroically repelling one onslaught after another, protecting every meter of our Ukrainian land in the Bakhmut fortress. The enemy is utilizing Army aviation, MLRS, using artillery, tanks, and other weaponry. But our boys and girls are bravely standing and doing their job. Bakhmut fortress is holding. Glory to Ukraine. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, but we can hear that according to that commander of the 127th, over the past 24 hours, Russians are hitting every part of the line they can with just about everything they've got. And we'll have to wait and see over the next 24 hours if Ukrainian lines will hold or if the Russians will start to break through. Of course, the Ukrainians have been able to hold on for nearly 7 months at this point, but it is starting to become a very strenuous and very difficult battle for Ukrainian forces. We're now going to be moving on to a clip further south and towards the southern end of the town, where we saw the Belarusian volunteer unit, of course famously associated with the Mustache Man, taking some drone footage of the city of Bakhmut over the past 48 hours or so, and also showing us what they've been doing there. When you see the footage here, fires enveloping large parts of the southern end of the city, and also apartment buildings as well. And we can see the masterful drone footage that Ukrainians have come to be known for, as they're showing the damage to the city, and how intense the fight has been for buildings to be such, I guess you could say, heavily destroyed as these. We now see the rows of residential buildings on the outskirts of the town that have been completely destroyed, and the ongoing fires in the center of the city. We can also see down to the flanks in the countryside, towards the area of Klishkivka and also north to Krasnoora. We can see Belarusian Humvee on the move. We can see some guys on patrol out in the fields. And we can now see them inside of the city itself, moving through the debris. We can see this Humvee here moving through, a Belarusian commander deploying a drone. Some guys standing by, a guy on the radio, some guys looking at a large map that was actually really nice. Another guy on the radio. We can see them looking at a Frontline map. We can now see them preparing some mortars. We can now see them showing an ATGM, I believe. We now see some kind of a candle with a commander.
Man, that's a strong survival like little fire thing.
Yeah, man, that thing was huge. Like, this thing is called the Ultra Deluxe Lumen, because this thing is lighting up a room. We now see them hanging out inside of a basement, most likely of a building. We now see a Humvee gunner firing off his 50 cals. They're on the move. We now see an ATGM set up in a building. So Belarusians on a patrol once more. Now driving down one of the roads leading out of town, we saw some kind of a missile streak. We can see some explosions within Bakhmut. Belarus's commanders once again looking out into the distance. A convoy moving through the city. The footage goes black right there. They're now firing off a small mortar. Most likely a 61 millimeter. And we just, wow, that was actually a really cool little bit of camera work right there. We got to see the mortar round fly off. So they hang it, drop it, poof, and there it goes. off to glory, hopefully. We now see them in a firefight here. We can now see them advancing through the town, firing off an ATGM. We also see them firing an SPG-9 right there. We see the Belarusian units fighting in the suburbs of the town, firing off an RPG. We now see some birds circling. We don't know what kind, maybe crows or ravens. We can now see another mortar firing as they send out another round. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but once again, great to see that the Belarusian volunteers have been doing their part in the Battle of Bakhmut and making sure that the fortress city holds for as long as possible, or at least as long as time will permit. We're now going to be moving on from that clip and on into our next one, which is actually from the other day, and we finally found out what that massive explosion was in Bakhmut. Now, Matthew, you remember that one that looked like a small nuclear bomb had gone off in the city?
Yes.
So apparently that was the Ukrainians demolishing the House of Culture, or the Palace of Culture as it was called during Soviet times. We actually got some drone footage of that right here. And we're going to have to mute that, but we can see the massive plume coming out of the Palace of Culture. And from what we understand, there's either two running stories for this explosion right here. Either Russian forces had entered the building, and the Ukrainians, of course, had set up demolition charges to blow it up once they entered, or the Ukrainians destroyed it right before the Russians got to it, so that way the Russians could not use it as a defensive position against the Ukrainians. We're not really sure which story to go with right now, because it's not exactly clear which one's true, but they did blow up the Palace of Culture building.
You know, honestly, if the Russians are going to take the town, you might as well go ahead and just level the buildings anyway, because it's pretty much it's lost to the Russians at that point. Don't want to let them use it for their own places and defensive spots.
That's true, and there's really not a lot of people there anymore. Maybe a few hundred left out of a town of 71,000. So it's not really like there's a massive population that will need these buildings. And, you know, it is what it is, I guess. But we can see a Ukrainian commander moving through, I guess you could say, the dust of the explosion afterwards. And we can see that as they're walking through it, they start getting caked in it more and more. More and more of the dust gets on their uniforms. They start turning into a gray color. But still, Very interesting to see that they have started to use a massive number of demolition charges in Bakhmut, either to take out Russian forces once they enter buildings, or to stop Russians from using buildings once they get to them. And so with that, we're going to be moving on to our next clip, where we saw that the 93rd Brigade, the famous fighting 93rd that has become famous on this channel, was helping with the evacuations from the city of citizens that are still in Ukrainian-controlled areas. You see a mortar explosion, well, actually a large artillery exploding right in front of them. We see them passing a Ukrainian tank right there. Once again, showing another explosion. We can see them conducting the evacuation. How do people still live here? Why do they stay? I have no idea. We see that explosion down the road. And we see an American volunteer right there that had to have been an American volunteer.
Дед и все, потому что мама отказалась ехать.
Мама не поедет?
Я не їду.
А почему вы не едете?
Ну, тому що внук загинув, а тут треба остатися.
И что, мы вчера вашего внука вывезли. Он лежит в морге, чтобы вы могли его похоронить.
Я понимаю.
Но.
Вот, ну, я...
Real quick, I'm actually going to rewind that because I forgot. I have to read off the subtitles. So let me go back. So right here. Just granddad. Mom's refused to go. Mom isn't coming? No, no, no. I'm not going. Why? Well, my grandson died and I have to stay here. Look, we brought out his body last night. He's in the morgue so that you can bury him. I understand, but I'll stay. Do you understand you will perish here? I won't. They'll protect me. They will tell you the same thing. I will see them. I can't go. I must stay. Grandpa, my daughter, and her husband are leaving. Thank you, but I won't go. My grandma lives in that basement. Another one lives there. Do you like living like this? I don't. It won't end anytime soon. It might never end. All wars come to an end. Then we see the sunset over Bakhmut right there.
You know, in that situation, I would say, you know, as bad as it sounds, simply put her in the vehicle and take her anyway.
Yeah, that's sad though, and I guess, you know, I mean, I can kind of get it though, like the shock of seeing your son get killed, and you know they had to sit there with his body in the basement with them until the Ukrainians went and retrieved his body. And I guess, you know, that left such an impact on the grandmother that while everyone else would leave, she decided not to and to stay there, I guess, as a kind of a gesture to the son that died there. But a really sad video to look at, and once again putting into reality, while there's still very few citizens left within the city of Bakhmut, it is very strenuous and very dangerous for a lot of them. And we can see that Ukrainian evacuator right there from the 93rd trying to talk sense into the grandmother and telling her that there's really no point in staying there because, you know, you'll probably die too, but she decided that she'd rather stay. And so with that, once again, a very sad video, but once again, putting this war into reality, what it really is. And we're now going to be moving on from that clip and on out of the city of Bakhmut and towards the rear lines near the highway perimeter in Ivanivsky, where we saw the road into Bakhmut once more. And we'll have to mute this one for copyright reasons, but we can see them on the move on some kind of an APC. It looks like a BMP of a sort. We haven't seen the turret yet to tell if it's a BMP 1 or 2. But when you see that the road they're taking into the town is an incredibly dirt country road. It is dirt to the extreme. It appears that they're also following an MTLB into the battlefield. And this is one of the country roads I've been talking about where supply lines would be practically impossible to utilize. A supply truck would most likely get bogged down in this kind of muddy road conditions, and the supplies would either be slow to a snail's pace or they wouldn't get to the city at all. But of course the APCs are able to trudge through a little bit better, but once again it is still treacherous as a APC even, or a tank, could get bogged down in this kind of muddy road conditions. See him turning around, and we can see that it looks like the turret of a BMP-1. So it appears they're riding a BMP-1 into the city. You see them still making their way into Bakhmut as the video ends, but once again showing more forces entering Bakhmut to continue on the battle and to try and hold the city of Bakhmut as long as possible. With that, we're now going to be moving on from this bit of news and on towards the highway perimeter itself, where we saw a Ukrainian soldier taking the time to save an owl. This was, of course, from the 127th. We actually just saw the 127th's commander giving an update on the situation in Bakhmut, and here's a soldier from the same unit saving an owl from some kind of a snare or being caught in a tree. You see the owl right there. When you see him getting it off the tree. And over here, we can see the owl hanging on to the towel.
Взяли прибор ночного видения.
You now see them getting the owl out of whatever this is.
Лески от тура. Освобождаем птичку на волю.
We see the owl patiently sitting there. Man, that thing looks like Mr. Corgi whenever he hears that certain word for that certain treat. It's got that same look in his eyes.
Понтелись пост, да.
When you see them joking about it, the owl takes this as no joke. And they're eventually getting it off the little claw there. And they finally got it off, and now they have themselves a pet owl. And so the video repeats itself. But hey, one thing they never told Ukrainian soldiers going into the battlefield is that the owls there, they're free. Like, I'm not kidding. You can literally just take them home with you. And so they got an owl now as, I guess, their unit mascot, because it looks like it's pretty intent on staying with them for a little bit, and it's not really wanting to leave, I guess, or they may be keeping it there as a mascot. But still, very nice to
put
see.
that thing to work. Let it carry a radio or something in the battle.
Dude, they'd be sitting there, the Russians are breaching the line. Who? Oh, man, shoot that thing. But anyways, with that, that's the end of the clip. And great to see that they took the time out of this gruesome battle to try and save the poor little owl right there. And I got to say, those eyes are something, like with that orange color. That's really something. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into I guess you could say the rest of the front line itself, because that was actually our last bit of news from the Bakhmut battlefield. Of course, once again, showing a very difficult battle, and it does appear that the Russians are making very slow progress. It will most likely take several more weeks until they actually take the city itself. With that, we're now moving on down into the area of Druzhba, where we saw a Portuguese armored car. We have not actually seen any of these before, and this is the first time we've ever seen one. Now, I've got to be honest with you, this is the most Disney Pixar-style delivery truck-looking armored car I've ever seen before. It's not that bad, though. It is a VM90P, so I'll type in a VM90 and show y'all one in its natural environment in the Portuguese armed forces. And this one was used in Iraq. So there's a picture of one. Very interesting to see. That one is not armored.
No, it looks like a safari vehicle or something.
Oh, here's the VM90P. This is the armored version of the vehicle. But not as armored as other armored cars, it appears. But still, an interesting vehicle. I've got to say, not the best looking one we've ever seen. If it's winning if it's winning a looks competition, probably never will win one. It's probably going to be towards the bottom of the list, but still very interesting to see. And holy moly, this guy is pumping iron down here. Jeez.
Yeah, seriously, what is he lifting? Like 150 pounds an arm?
Dude, this guy is sitting here and he's like, man, a war may be going on and I might have an iron to shoot Russians with, but I got to build up my own irons. You know what I mean? He's down here pumping that iron. Jeez. Dude, this guy...
Man, he probably held those for like 1 second while they took the picture, then he like dropped them. There's no way you can fit that kind of weight up.
If this guy is seriously lifting that, though, this guy is going to be able to pick up that armored car in a little bit. He's going to be walking onto the front lines, and the Russian's going to be going, they're assaulting our lines. And he's going to go, no, I'm assaulting you. He's just going to pick him up and rip him in two. And then one Russian's going to be like, Jesus Christ, блядь, I just watched my comrade get split in two with this guy's bare heads, блядь. But still...
Are those mines?
No, I don't think so.
A lot of people were saying mines. It looks like landmines.
Dude,
he's lifting landmines?
Dude, that's hardcore if he's lifting landmines. I mean, like,
damn.
How much of a cooler picture can you get? Also, I just noticed another cool thing I've never seen on another armored car. Now, this thing may be ugly, yes. It's got smoke grenades.
That's pretty cool.
So if you ever see this thing, and the Russians like, oh, armored car, and the Ukrainians can be like, no, you don't. And they're just going to pop out smoke grenades and most likely just back up off the field. That is actually something I've never seen before on any armored car. And very neat little addition for an armored car. And so with that...
Very good. Does this guy even lift, though?
Oh, he does, man. There's no question.
Do you lift, bro?
This man be lifting. But hopefully he doesn't skip leg day. You can't skip leg day. You know what I mean? And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that little bit of news in the northern Donetsk area. And we're now going to be moving on towards Verkhnyo-Toretsk, where we saw a Russian soldier being hit today by a kamikaze drone.
А воно йде. Що ти вийшов? Думаєш зловити дрона? Та-тах, та-тах, та-та-тах, тах-тах, та-та-тах. На!
Oh my god,
Dang.
dude, that thing went in like a soccer ball. Look at this thing.
Та-та-тах, тах-тах, та-та-тах.
Here it comes right there. You can see it. Do you see the little orb that was flying over the
Yeah.
field?
На!
Dude, it flew in so slowly, though. It was like going like 10 miles an hour.
На!
But they got him. And now we can see the footage from the drone itself. It's flying in. It's coming on in. It's getting close now. And this is the slowest mad dash I've ever seen. It's going straight for the dugout opening. And there we have it, right into the middle of the outpost. Pretty wild to see. And also, it was funny to hear this guy going da-da-da-da. He sounded like the Morse code message at the beginning of our stream.
А воно йде. Що ти вийшов?
Here it
Думаєш
comes.
зловити дрона? Та-тах, та-тах, та-та-тах, тах-тах, та-та-тах. На!
Dude, I just imagine this drone looks so small on the other drone camera. I just imagine it sounds like a bee coming in, going.
Та-тах, тах-тах, та-та-тах.
And then it gets him. It's like, dang. Now you know the Russians in that thing were pissed watching that thing flying at 5 miles an hour. But anyways, that's the end of that clip. Once again, another successful drone operation on the Ukrainians' end, and we don't know how many Russians that got, but I'm guessing maybe 1 or 2. And so with that, we're now moving on from that little clip in the Donetsk area and on down into Avdiivka, where we saw President Zelenskyy actually visited the Avdiivka front line today. He was there, Matthew. He was there, and he took a selfie with the troops.
And it was actually him. It wasn't a body double.
No, it was not the body double. Unlike Putin, who always almost uses body doubles, and actually has never been near the front lines. The closest he ever got was Mariupol. But Zelenskyy was at the lines today. He was actually in Avdiivka, and we can see him taking a picture with the Ukrainian soldier right there. And I gotta say, this guy is striking the selfie pose. Like, that's the pose
Yes.
you make when you take a selfie. But with that, we're gonna be moving.
This explains why Putin apparently made an appearance somewhere in the occupied region of Ukraine today, or at least the body double or somebody, because apparently Zelensky's making the rounds too.
Apparently, I would take a guess that's why. We can also see him taking pictures with Ukrainian troops who are defending the city of Avdiivka right now. We can also see him talking to what may be a commander in the area. We can also see him handing out an award to a Ukrainian soldier here. And I gotta say, man, that is a knife right there on that guy's plate. That looks like a K-bar.
I think it is.
And so in the last picture here, I was actually about to go down a rabbit hole. I had to stop myself there, so that's why I just awkwardly moved on. But in the last picture, we can also see him handing out more awards and medals. Now, I know that I usually try and not go through a lot of rabbit holes in our stream, but something very interesting to share about the K-bar is that the K-bar actually was not called the K-bar. Did you know that, Matthew?
It was called. I can't remember what it was called, but I knew it wasn't called that originally.
It was some other kind of knife. It was something like the battlefield utility knife or something like that. But the company that made them called Union Cutlery, and they were the only company that did this. They would stamp onto the, I guess you could say, handguard. You know, that little piece in between the wooden handguard itself and the blade. It's like that
Yes.
little. They actually would stamp onto all of those that they were made from Union Cutlery, KA-bar. And it was only present on the Union Cutlery versions of this style of knife. And so a lot of the soldiers who got these knives from Union Cutlery ended up looking at that thing, and they would go, oh, it's K-bar. And so they started calling everything K-bar. They called all of these knives, regardless of whether they were made by Union Cutlery or not, K-bars. And so at the end of the war, Union Cutlery actually renamed itself to K-bar and renamed the kind of knife that is to K-bar. So still, really neat story. Someone said, that is not a K-bar. It kind of looks like it to me. And I'm not really a big knife person, so, you know, I'm probably wrong on that. It just kind of has a similar style, but a very interesting story behind the K-bar, if it was one. So with that, we're now going to be moving on out of Avdiivka. Once again, really cool to see Zelenskyy awarding the brave troops who are holding that city right now. And we're now going to be moving on down into the area of Marinka. So with that, we could see that the Ukrainians were firing a Dishka, a real legitimate Dishka, out of a destroyed building in the city. And so with that, here's the clip. Everyone just went deaf right there.
Yeah. My ears
What? What did you say? It's just... Golly! And his guts are shaking. So he's just walking off now. He's like, I'm dying from internal bleeding. And now he's going to take a turn. Oh.
Получається, в тебе не получається. Легенько нажимай, раз і все.
Man, I'm telling you, the noise of this thing is something. The Dishka is a pretty beefy gun. And it appears that the audio is now lagging in this video. Because we're hearing the sound and then seeing the flash afterwards. But it's just firing that quickly, Matthew. The gun is so loud, you hear the noise before you see the flash. This thing is so loud, it's thrown off the synchronization of the audio and the video on the phone. Now we see him getting ready for probably a final few shots. Just make sure everyone's extra deaf. Actually, he's decided to walk off before he killed everyone's hearing permanently. With that, that's the end of that clip. Once again, we didn't get a lot of info from Marinka today. It appears that the front line is stable and no further action is going on in that area. As we move on out of the Marinka area and onto the southern front, we only got one bit of news today from Malinivka, where we saw a sniper just hanging out. This guy's just chilling. Look at him. He's just a little fella with a sniper rifle and a ghillie suit, just wandering his way around. That's actually a really nice ghillie suit as well. And when you see him setting up his rifle right there for the cameras, because we don't really see a lot of snipers setting up in windows as obvious as this and sticking their rifle out, so that's certainly for the cameraman. And then the last picture, we can see a couple of other snipers. And I gotta tell you, Ukrainian snipers get some of the best looking rifles with the best looking scopes. I mean, this thing looks like it's what the hell's that rifle, Matthew? Let's see, I think it's Beretta.
Shaytak M200.
I think it is.
Intervention.
Yeah, that thing looks nice. It's got a bipod, a little silencer. It's got a nice scope. It's got everything, man. I mean, like people.
Man, it's got that nice suppressor wrap, looking all Gucci out there.
Man, this thing looking all. I don't know. I forgot. Anyways, with that, we're now moving on from that picture. Still great to see the snipers of the 36th Marine Brigade in operation in the southern front. And with that, we're now going to be moving on out of the southern front and on into Kyiv. Because, believe it or not, we've covered all of the news, north to south, east to west, that came from the war in Ukraine today. And so without further ado, we're going to be getting straight to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And so here is the speech from President Zelenskyy on day 419 of the war.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Завершуємо цей день у Полтаві. Доволі довгий день та емоційний. Ранком був на Донеччині у нашій Авдіївці. Важко бачити те, що російські терористи зробили з цим містом. І шана кожному нашому воїну, усім українцям і українкам, які вже 419 днів і 9 років стримують і поступово знищують це російське зло. Мав честь привітати українських солдатів та офіцерів із Великоднем, вручити нагороди. Я часто у вечірніх зверненнях дякую саме їм за влучність і хоробрість, за знищення окупантів. 55-та окрема артилерійська бригада, морпіхи, 35-ї і 36-ї окремої бригад, десантники, 79-ї окремої бригади, воїни 110-ї окремої механізованої бригади, 501-й окремий батальйон морської піхоти, окрема президентська бригада імені Богдана Хмельницького. Дякую усім вам за службу і дякую вам всім за шеврони, які ви мені дали сьогодні. Це справді почесно. Дякую, хлопці. Особливо хочу подякувати нашим медичним силам, усім лікарям, медичним сестрам і братам, які повертають наших захисників і захисниць до життя після поранень. І на Донеччині, і тут в Полтаві відвідав шпиталі. Гордість за наших людей, сильних навіть тоді, коли вони ще відновлюють свої сили. Честь і шана усім, хто лікує наших воїнів. Провів в Полтаві тривалу змістовну нараду щодо ситуації в регіоні, військове керівництво, місцева влада, першочергово безпекові та соціальні питання, безпека для закладів освіти, відбудова, забезпечення переселенців. Є рішення по відновленню енергетики, генерації та мереж. Є різні доручення робочого рівня. Те, чим ми маємо підтримати Полтавщину, обов'язково це зробимо. Важливо, що жодного дня не втрачаємо у спілкуванні з нашими партнерами. І саме звідси, з Полтави, провів розмову зі спікером Палати представників Конгресу США Кевіном Маккарті, подякував за незмінну двопартійну підтримку. Щойно після поїздки на передову поінформував пана Маккарті про те, що відбувається зараз на фронті, про наші оборонні потреби і можливості. Підняв питання F-16, далекобійної зброї та додаткової артилерії та трибуналу щодо агресії Росії проти нашої держави. Бо разом робимо вільний світ міцніше, і кожен долар інвестицій у таку міцність є абсолютно зрозумілим та підзвітним для наших партнерів. Запросив пана спікера відвідати Україну. Це дійсно дуже надихає та підтримує, коли бачиш нашу українську рішучість і знаєш, що перемога буде. Дякую Донеччині і Полтавщині за сьогоднішній день. Усім дякую, хто працює заради нашої перемоги. Слава кожному і кожній, хто зараз в бою, на бойових постах, у бойових завданнях. І окремо хочу сьогодні відзначити тих наших бійців, які виявляють і знищують ворожі позиції, ті позиції, з яких окупант обстрілює наші міста і села. Російські удари по Херсону, по Береславському району, по містам Донеччини, усі удари ворога отримують нашу відповідь. Відчутну відповідь. Слава Україні!
That is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. That wraps up our day 419 news summary of the war in Ukraine. I thank everyone so much once again for watching this stream. Of course, we just came back from our Monday break, and we'll be streaming for the rest of the week up until Sunday, where of course we'll be running another Sunday fundraiser that will hopefully blow it out of the park. I once again want to thank every single one of y'all so much for watching. If y'all would like, make sure to hit the like button, if you would like. You see what I did there? Also, make sure to subscribe, and also make sure to share this with the folks at home, because this, of course, helps this channel to keep on running and also lets us know that people do appreciate what we're doing and want us to keep it running. And of course, if you do enjoy this channel, always make sure, if you can, of course, to support us, because it does help us to keep this thing rolling, and it's the only way that we're able to. We don't run ads. It's completely ad-free, completely sponsor-free. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into the polls. And what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and we have 5 polls to address during our final question segment. And the very first one says, according to leaked Russian docs, 65% of the Russian army is expected to serve in the Ukraine war. And what are your thoughts? 58% said it's got to be more than that. 22% said it sounds close enough. 10% said it sounds right on point, and 10% said unsure. And on this one, I'm going to go with the 22% that said it sounds close enough. I'm not totally sure exactly what the number really should be, but I'd imagine it's definitely over 50%, and 65 sounds like it'd be about right, but that's just my guess because I really don't know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it seems as though that would most likely be an accurate number, especially from what we've seen right now and with the Russian casualty statistics. I would have to believe that that would be the closest number that we've heard, but I have a feeling it may even be a little bit above 65%. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next poll says the U.S. says that it has sensitive nuclear technology at a Ukraine power. Excuse me, whoa, I'm just messing up that
dude.
severely.
Take your time.
Let me start over from the beginning.
Take your time or something. Dang.
That got me good. But anyways, this one says the U.S. says it has sensitive nuclear technology at a Ukraine nuclear plant. It warns Russia not to touch it. And what are your thoughts? There we go. 62% said, what? Why did we leave that there? 18% said unsure. 10% said, it's fine, not a big deal. And 10% said, that's horrible and very risky. And I'm kind of confused at this point as to what that actually is that we've left there. If it's something very sensitive, why would we send that to Ukraine, where we knew there was a possibility of Russia invading, and not retrieve it before it actually broke out? So I'm with the 62%. Why did we leave it there, and what is it? So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would also have to ask that question as well. What the hell is that, and why is it there? And why in the world would we not have it removed once we saw that the situation was getting very tough? That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But, of course, the U.S. government has its own priorities. It is very smart and very, very intelligent. So I'm sure, Matthew, that they know what's best. But still, I have no idea.
Yeah. Now, what kind of statement is that to make to the Russians? Also, we have some really secret nuclear technology. Make sure y'all don't touch it. It's like that's going to make them go to it.
Now they're saying they're literally ripping the plan apart with high explosives, trying to figure out where this tech is. But yeah, I don't know why in the world we would say that, and I don't know why in the world we would have left it there either, if that's actually a true statement. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one says G7 foreign ministers warn of severe consequences if Russia uses weapons of mass destruction. And what are your thoughts? 47% said the West would put troops on the ground. 33% said the West would respond with nukes. 12% said unsure, and 8% said we would do nothing. And on this one, I've kind of flip-flopped on this one. I had a different answer earlier in the war. I personally didn't think we would do anything. I'm still kind of leaning that way, but I think if we were to respond in a severe consequence kind of way, I think we would do it with nukes, to be honest. I doubt putting troops on the ground would be the solution, because if Russia's lobbing nukes into Ukraine, why would we send troops to go on the ground while they're doing that? That wouldn't make much sense. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say if they did conduct some kind of a tactical nuclear strike on Ukraine, we would probably have some kind of a military response. If they did something like that, I feel like we would begin a conventional war from Finland and the Baltics, heading towards St. Petersburg, Moscow, and also Murmansk and Arkhangelsk to largely destroy the Russians' naval abilities and to also start crippling the Russians in the war. But once again, that is a big if, because the Russians are already showing that they will use tactical nuclear weapons on Ukraine. It would be safe to assume that if the United States intervened, they would start immediately using tactical nuclear weapons on U.S. forces there as well. So I have a feeling that we would probably start using tactical nuclear weapons on the Russians, most likely some kind of like a B-61 nuclear bomb that's carried by an aircraft and dropped onto frontline forces, in an attempt to start to turn the tide immediately. And then we would probably see that within maybe a week or two, it would escalate into a mutually assured destruction situation where everyone just starts flinging the nukes at each other. And then we see when the smoke clears how many people really survived. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. But I have a feeling if the Russians did do something like that, we would respond practically immediately. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one says North Korea has completed production on a recon satellite and launch may be imminent. And what are your thoughts? 37% said it's fine, it won't matter anyways. 29% said we really can't do anything about it. 10% said unsure, and 24% said the West cannot allow it to launch. And honestly, I'm not really sure exactly what North Korea would gain by having a surveillance satellite, because they are already buddies with China, who already has those satellites. So in theory, they could simply just get it from China and work out some kind of arrangement there. Any technology that North Korea has that they're launching into space probably isn't that good, so I wouldn't really worry about it unless they've gotten it from a foreign country. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that doesn't really make a lot of sense for them. On top of that, once they run out of their Windows XP subscription, what are they going to do? What are they going to do then? How are they going to run it? So
you subscribe to Windows XP?
Well, they do. Like back in the day, they were paying for subscription. I think they probably still are. They're probably mailing in the monthly payments to Windows over mail and just cash in it like in an envelope. But I don't really know if that would make a lot of sense for them. And on top of that, isn't their country in the middle of like starving to death right now? Don't they have better things to do, like figuring out how to feed people instead of launching a military satellite? To me, it doesn't seem to make much sense, especially for a country that is as backwards as North Korea technologically. But I guess they have their own reasons. Maybe the Chinese aren't sharing any satellite data with them, and that's why they're wanting to launch their own, so that way they can actually see what's going on in the world outside of North Korea. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next poll.
All right, and our last poll says, should Ukraine level cities such as Bakhmut before leaving? 48% said yes, because you don't want to let Russia have anything. 7% said unsure. 27% said only level critical buildings. And 19% said no, don't destroy your own cities. And I would go with the 48%. If you're going to leave the city, don't let Russia have it. You don't want to let them use that as a new infrastructure to stage, military equipment and stuff there. So I would say level it. But Enforcer, what say you?
Like how you said that, you're like, I say level it. I say blow it smithereens. But in my opinion, I wouldn't actually disagree with that all too much. I would say that it would probably be smart for the Ukrainian armed forces to make sure to destroy critical buildings in the city as they're withdrawing out of them. because that means the Russians will not be able to use them most likely for some kind of supply hub in the future, where that even is a concern for the Ukrainians. The Russians will have nothing but debris to work with, and that's not suitable enough for a supply basis to be set up. So that would be my opinion on that. I would believe that it is probably pertinent to destroy those buildings for strategic interests, and with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll. So, of course, we are moving on to our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have two very generous $50 Super Chats. The first one is from Jayburn, and the second one is from none other than BC Skyman. Sadly, no comments to address with either one, but Jayburn and BC, thank you very much for that support and helping to keep the lights on as always. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I've got to thank y'all so much, Jayburn and BC Skyman, for y'all support and helping the channel to keep on running. Y'all didn't leave a comment, but of course, it is greatly appreciated because y'all are the only way that this channel can keep on running. And I thank y'all for always remembering us because it is, of course, the only way we can keep this thing rolling. We make sure to run an ad-free and sponsor-free stream, and thanks to y'all support, we are able to make that possible. And we can't thank y'all enough because, of course, it is the only way we survive. And I've made a vow that no matter how bad things got, we would never run a ad or a sponsorship on this stream. And I thank y'all so much for helping us to always be able to keep this stream running, because without y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this possible. And of course, thank y'all so much once again, because everyone does amazing in the fundraisers. The LSA certainly does this thing, and I thank everyone who doesn't forget about us behind the scenes and always make sure that we are able to keep this news running and also make sure to keep those fundraisers rolling as well. And so with that, we are on to the next one. But I want to thank both of y'all so much once again for helping us to keep the Lee Spring Army rolling.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 Super Chat from Tony Fleming. And thank you very much, Tony, for the support. He says, just for the hell of it, and Dio Presso Liber.
And thank you so much for the support, Tony. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. I thank you for the hell of it, because the hell of it helps us to keep this thing running for the hell of it. And without y'all support, it wouldn't be possible. And so, thank you so much once again, De Oppresse Libre. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, shout out to BC Skyman once again, because he put in a $40 Super Chat as well. Sadly, also without a comment. But BC, thank you so much for coming in very strong tonight with the support, and we do appreciate it very much once again. And Enforcer probably has something else to add to it as well.
You know I gotta. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support, BC Skyman. Once again, helping us to keep the lights on behind the scenes in this channel, making sure to keep this thing rolling, and of course, without your support, it wouldn't have ever been possible, and it wouldn't have been possible now. And I got to thank everyone so much who supports this channel and helps us keep it running, because y'all are really a large part of why this thing is able to keep rolling, because we were able to focus on this thing as a full-time job, throwing in combined at least 100 hours a week amongst the both of us into making sure that things run smoothly on the stream. The news is always put together, the Twitter is always putting out the good tweets, and always making sure to run those Sunday fundraisers. So thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment. Hope that does address the support fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And our next Super Chat goes to JD Mako23, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, JD, for that support. He says, I really appreciate this community, and I love you two fellows and my LSA family. We're unstoppable. And keep up the good work, and please take a question from the chat. And LSA forever.
And I thank you so much for the kind words, both to us and the Lee Spring Army, because it is unbelievable to think of an amazing community like we have. I know people out there, because I talk to folks, and folks know I run this channel, friends of mine, and they're always like, man, that community is unbelievable. Like y'all have really created an amazing one. And of course, I really say that it's not so much Matthew and me who created the community. It's more of just how the community formed. It was by sheer luck that it is one of the best communities on YouTube. And so I never stop for a moment to sit there and not toot the whistle of the LSA. I always toot the whistle of the LSA and talk about how great of a community y'all are, because y'all are truly unbelievable. What other community out there can raise $18,700 on a single fundraiser. Nobody can. Not that, at least that I know of. And, there's not a lot of people out there who run fundraisers for Ukraine. There's always the Patreon plugs and also the people who say, give me a super chat and then I'll give it to someone. But there's not a lot of people who actually run legitimate YouTube Give fundraisers that actually are helping out Ukraine. And I got to thank you all so much once again for always believing in our fundraisers, always believing in us, and helping us to keep this thing rolling so that way we can keep covering the news and also doing the fundraisers. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you all so much once again, and especially you, JD Mako, for the support. And also, did he want a live chat?
He did want a live chat.
And so let's get to that thing, man.
All right, so the live chat question goes to, let's see here, goes to Drew Robinson, who says, do you think it'll ever come to blows between the U.S. and Russia directly over the nuclear power plant ordeal?
Probably not. Because now that it's in Russian hands, once again, really all we can do is make a diplomatic protest, unless we want to go into outright war, because there's only so much a diplomatic protest can do, and no one's really obligated to follow through with anything that happens or any kind of pressure that is exhibited through a diplomatic protest. So really the only way we can try and make sure that they don't get those classified secrets or to get them back is to go to war with them. So with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well, because that's really our only two options, is either to let them have it and make a protest, or go to war and try and take it back, and then probably end up nuking each other, and then they figure out the secrets of how many nukes we have, and we also figure out the secret of how many operational nukes do they still have. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one. And thank you once again, JD Mako, for the support and sponsoring that live chat.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Spencer. And Spencer says, have you addressed the casualty numbers leaked? According to those, Ukraine is getting a beatdown, and what are your thoughts?
We have seen the casualty reports, and a lot of them that showed that the Ukrainians were getting a beatdown were largely misrepresented. Those were actually edited by pro-Russian bots for the large part to try and make it seem like the Ukrainians were losing. The thing is, however, is that the Ukrainians couldn't lose like the Russians can lose, because they have smaller numbers of troops, and also because of that, they have a smaller ability to train a decent number of troops. So if they were losing as badly as the doctored document said, they would have lost the war by now, in all honesty. They couldn't take those kinds of loss figures, at least the doctored ones, compared to the Russians, unless if they were just absolutely losing. And also, it wouldn't make a lot of sense, because for the most part in the war, the Ukrainians have been fighting defensively in most battles, and usually defensive battles, just by nature, usually have somewhere of a loss ratio of around 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 in favor of the defender. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense that they would be losing a lot more guys in battles like that, where the ratios would actually be the opposite, because that means they would be outright losing all of them, and we're not seeing that. Also, another thing is that the real classified document showed something of a loss ratio. I believe, Matthew, was like 4-to-1 or 3-to-1.
Yeah, on the supposedly the original ones, the Ukrainians, I believe, were taking out 5 for every one Ukrainian that was taken out.
And that's a very good ratio historically. Even during the Second World War, the average ratio between Western military and the Germans, whenever they went head-to-head, would be somewhere around 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. So 5-to-1 is actually well on up there once again. And from what we've been seeing, that appears to be incredibly good for the Ukrainians, because obviously they're not going to be taking just a few hundred losses over the course of a year and inflicting over 100,000 on the Russians. They're going to be taking a decent amount of losses as well, but once again, not high enough to where it looks like they're getting beat badly and they'll be losing the war. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that does address the question fairly well. A pretty good one, because the classified documents have been going around and spreading largely I guess you could say misinformation about Ukrainian losses, but a 5-to-1 ratio is actually historically very hard to get to, and shows that the Ukrainians definitely have an upper hand in training and their ability to actually inflict losses on the field while mitigating theirs. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one while I stutter through that. And thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and the next one goes to Psyops, and he puts in a $10 super chat. And thank you very much, Psyops, for the support. He says, let's see. Now this first part looks suspicious. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to say. It's a riddle, and I think there's a deeper meaning behind it. So,
it's going.
With that being said, I'm going to read the second part of it. The second part says, "Happy birthday to Bobby Karolfa. Can we get some Bert A10 appreciation in the chat. And also, happy birthday to you, Bobby.
Hey!
Science did tell me earlier it was your birthday, and I almost forgot to call it out, so I'm glad he put that in the super chat. But thanks to you, Science, and also happy birthday to Bobby.
And happy birthday to Bobby. It's great to hear because Bobby's been around forever. And so happy birthday to you. I hope you're having a good one today. And also, thank you so much once again for the support, BC Skyman, and helping this channel to keep on running. And do we have a live chat question and answer from Bobby?
Let's see. Live chat. Let's see. From Bobby?
From Bobby, my boy Bobby.
Let's see here. Let's see. From Bobby. I don't see one in my spreadsheet here. But if Bobby wants to send one in, I'll certainly ask it.
And so with that, and also, let me make sure real quick. That wasn't PsyOps, was it? It was BC Skyman, right?
No, this was PsyOps.
What the hell? Why in the world did I say BC Skyman? For some reason, I swore you said BC Skyman. But it was PsyOps. So sorry about that. But thank you so much once again for the support, PsyOps. Of course, because I was thinking at the start, man, because I heard BC Skyman from the start when you said, I'm not going to read that first part off. I was like, there's no way BC Skyman is going to try and have us had because he's never done that before. So I don't know what in the world didn't translate there. You said PsyOps, and I just thought BC Skyman, but still. Thank you so much once again for the support, PsyOps. Happy birthday once again to Bobby Karalfa. And thank you so much once again, PsyOps, for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And PsyOps says, smack him for me. So, thwack, thwack. 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 Also, you saw that bot just get executed in the chat? NeviG.
I did not. Let me see here.
Man, he got smacked down. I said, Slav Ukraine, question mark? He said, I don't Slava anyone. I'm English. It's like we don't have to necessarily be Ukrainian to say Slava Ukraine. Everyone else says it. He was going on the whole time trying to pretend like he wasn't pro-Russia, and finally he let his true colors show.
Oh man. Let's see. Yeah, I'm looking through all of his chats here. I hear Russia. Oh, I hear Ukraine is steamrolling Russia. ... is opposite, and also I'm not pro any wars. It's like, oh man, you're not a good fit.
Yeah, it's
here,
like
man.
you gotta choose one side or the other. Somebody's in the right here. It can't be both of them in the wrong.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not pro-war or anything, but if it's the Russians, I will back them up all the way. I'm pro anything Russia. It's like, then you're pro-war, you know? It's like, that's just that contradicts itself. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. Thank you once again for the support, Saps. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to PsyOps yet again. He puts in another $10 super chat.
Dang, dude, you good?
I'm dying over here. But anyways, PsyOps says, Dearest Mr. Corgi, and he addresses us to Mr. Corgi, I have sent in the A10s to secure your release. Andrew, can we get a glorious Bert video? B-R-R-R-R-T-T-T-T-T, or sound effect played.
That's the best I can do. Was that good? Let's see. I'll pull up an A10 though. A10 gun sound. Let's get the sound.
Go get some of our boy Funker's footage.
Oh yeah. Here we go. I got one from War Leaks actually. Let's go over to War Leaks. Let's check him out. Man, listen to that. Dang!
That's secondary, like, Bert sound is creepy.
Yeah, it is. It's just so weird. Oh, no, not the M110s. Come on.
Put these things in the Ukraine already.
Dude, every other country in the world, I wish I had some artillery. Meanwhile, in America, let's take the old artillery pieces out to the field and put them down like dogs or something. Oh my god. Man, that is something really. I mean, you know, you can have your own thoughts on the A-10, whether it's a modern aircraft for the modern battlefield or what, but that gun always makes an impression. In fact, in Afghanistan, they would actually have demoralized units taken off the line and brought to places where they knew it was safe for A-10s to fly, and they would have them literally just fly over them and fire the gun at some kind of like a stationary target in a field just to boost their morale, because the A-10 had such a morale boosting effect on soldiers that it was pretty much used as a morale machine.
That's crazy. You know what I don't understand? Why does the U.S. military want to retire this aircraft? They keep saying it over and over and over, but yet they never do it. And it's still very effective. Like, it's really good at what it does. And they're trying to say that I think it's the F-35 can replace it. I don't think that's going to ever happen.
Yeah, they've been saying that. They've been saying that a lot. Actually, the idea to retire the A-10 has been going on even before the Gulf War. Like the campaign to start retiring the A-10 started in the late 80s, around 1987, 1988. In the Gulf War, the A-10 was such an awe-inspiring thing to the soldiers on the field that saw A-10s operating above them, and of course heard the sound of the gun, and also the press just ate up the A-10 during the Gulf War. They loved the A-10. That the idea to retire the A-10 died for a good while after the Gulf War, and then it was brought up again during the invasion of Iraq a little bit because the A-10s were getting lost a little bit. They're getting shot down somewhat. And since then, it's been a constant battle to keep the A-10 in service or to finally retire it. But the argument to retire the A-10 has been going on for nearly as long as it's been in service. As soon as it was introduced, people were already starting to try and retire the thing. But it's
And
not.
I see some folks saying, like, for example, Jordan said the A-10 is too slow. It is pretty slow for an aircraft, but I don't think it was ever designed to be really fast. Because it has to go at a slower speed to be able to hit ground targets accurately the way it does, and that's also why they added the I think it's titanium bathtub to it, so that way it can withstand enemy fire at a high rate.
But the titanium bathtub only exists around the pilot. Because there is no real armor on an A-10. It's kind of a myth, kind of like the Ka-52 was a quote-unquote flying tank. The only part of this thing that is a tank is around the pilot, and that's why it's called a titanium bathtub. Is a bathtub-shaped titanium coffin, pretty much, that surrounds the bottom of the cockpit, so that way he doesn't get killed by ground fire. But the A-10 can still get shot down. The wings could get sheared off easily by a SAM missile. The engines can still get blown away. But of course, them being in the cells instead of inside of a fuselage does help to keep at least one of the engines running if it is hit. So the survivability is higher. It's just that it's not going to survive like many people think. If it gets hit by a SAM, it most likely will get taken down, but the pilot will also survive for the most part. Whether that's for good or for worse, that's, up to if you think being captured is a good thing or not, especially being a pilot, because they usually get treated worse. But still, it is one hell of a plane, and especially when being used in the U.S. Air Force with all of the supporting aircraft we have. The A-10 is a great aircraft for the U.S. Air Force. Even to this day, from what we've seen, it does fairly well. Although you can expect higher losses of A-10s than any other aircraft in the Air Force, it still is a good plane for us. Other countries, however, like Ukraine, it is a question because Ukraine doesn't have all of the supporting aircraft and all of the supporting roles that we usually have airborne whenever an A-10 is in operation. So it is questionable whether it would be effective for Ukraine or not. But for the U.S. Air Force, it is a great aircraft, given that it has all of the proper support aircraft airborne with it while it's in operation. So with
I think the U.S. won't send them over because in actuality, we're still using them, and even though some of them seem like they're getting ready to be retired and stuff like that, we're actually going to keep them in service, and that's the reason why we're not actually just giving them to Ukraine.
And that's true. And also, contested airspace is a killer for this thing. If there's contested airspace, it will die. Most likely. Like, hell, even in the Gulf War, when we blew away Iraqi SAM sites for the most part in the early phase of the war, even when the A-10s started to be used, they were still getting shot down by man-pads and other similar, I guess you could say anti-air, because they're so slow, it's usually easy to get a hit on them, even with basic AA like a Gush gun or something like that. Anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. A-10 is still really cool, though. I don't think anyone can argue against that. And I hope you enjoyed listening to the sounds and the sights of the A-10. And thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And the next one goes to Lukakis, who puts in a $10 donation and says, "This is for the coffee and pizza fund. Love you all and keep the news fresh and the mood high." And a German flag and Ukraine flag.
And thank you so much for the support, Lukakis, for the pizza and coffee fund. Of course, we love pizza and coffee, and y'all make it possible for us to have pizza and coffee. Of course, I'm a Nitro Cold Brew guy and also a Papa John's guy, so that's the kind of pizza and coffee I'm getting. Matthew is also a Papa John's fella, but he's also a Keurig coffee guy. Oh, hello there. So I thank you so much for supporting our coffee and pizza addiction, because it also helps the stream to keep on running. It helps us to keep on the pounds and also helps us to keep spry enough to keep these streams running for 3.5 hours a night. And so thank you so much once again for support, Locaucus. Thank you for enjoying this channel enough that you find it worthwhile supporting, because I really can't say this enough. Y'all make this stream possible, supporting us, because we run it ad-free, we run it sponsor-free, and I gotta thank y'all so much once again. We always want folks to know that do support this channel that y'all are the, I guess I could say, the grease to the gears that keeps the machine running. And of course, it is free. I don't ever want anyone to think that we are trying to make people support the channel. We don't ever want people to think that, because we do make it entirely free. Y'all can watch without ever supporting the channel, without ever even having to watch an ad or a sponsorship. It is absolutely free, unless you do want to support us. But we're always grateful to people who do make the choice to do that, because y'all are the only thing that helps this channel to exist or not exist. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Lukakis. And I just saw Momo say, Papa John's sucks. What? Ew.
Oh, man.
It's not that bad. Now, I will say, local pizza shops, they do make great pizzas, but Papa John's, you can consistently get a pretty good pizza across most of the country. I will say this, though. The quality has decreased. I mean, you know, Papa John's did have 40 pizzas in 30 days, and he did say the quality did decrease. And I would have to agree, it has decreased a little bit, but not enough to draw me completely off of the brand. It's still a good pizza to me, better than the competitors at this point, at this moment. So I'm still a Papa John's kind of fella. And so with that...
And it's thick, too, that Papa John's pizza. That's that thick dough.
Man, and they put that cheese on there. Like, that cheese is thick. Damn, girl, you bowl of oatmeal because you thick. With that, thank you so much once again for the support to the coffee and the pizza fund. And thank you for helping us to eat and also get coffee. And so with that, we are on to the next. Shy has literally never had Papa John's.
Oh, go get some. Hey, Dark Warrior 137 said, hey, I work at Papa John's.
Hey,
you gonna hook us up with some pizza?
He gonna hook us up. Governor Ivy's gonna hook us up, because they also are a Papa John's person.
Hey.
Let's see. We don't. Wes Downer said Domino's is the best national pizza. Now I gotta say that it's above Pizza Hut in my opinion. Pizza Hut literally pulls out the spray grease and puts it on their pizza. So Domino's is above that, but in my opinion, it's still below Papa John's. Because I don't know what it is about Domino's pizza. I just don't vibe with the Domino's pizza. It's not bad. I'll eat it. But if I had the choice in between Papa John's and Domino's, I would probably pick Papa John's. Charlie Nickel said it's for kids' parties. What? No.
Kids.
No, Papa John's is good. Oh, come on. Come on. We got to run a poll. What's the best pizza? What's the best major pizza chain? Papa John's. No, what's the best pizza? Let's put that as the question. Papa John's, Domino's, Pizza Hut, or local store?
Papa John's, Domino's, Pizza Hut, and local store.
Yeah, and local store.
Best pizza? Question mark.
There
we go.
We are a stream that believes in polls and believes in votes. So your vote counts. What's the best pizza?
Pull that, Jengi.
Call them out, call them out. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Okakis. Thank you once again for the pizza and coffee fund. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, oh, take a live chat question for Rodney. Oh,
man, I'm telling you, I'm getting no respect around here. No respect. I sit here and I talk about the Ukraine, and people tell me I have no idea what's going on. Oh man, I'm telling you, people these days they don't like nothing. Oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. Yesterday I tried to sit there and run a fundraiser, and someone said we're a bunch of crap. Oh man, I'm telling you, if only they were like us. Oh man, maybe they wouldn't be so sad or something. Oh, clip that, will you? Oh man, I'm telling you. But let's make sure to get a live chat, huh?
Yeah, and the live chat goes to White Wolf. I'm gonna stop that right now.
Oh,
White
man,
Wolf says,
like
"What about the
Marine? Oh man, I'm telling you."
What about the Marine that is still there that nobody is talking about in Russia? His name's Paul Whelan.
Oh man, I'm telling you. Now I hate doing a Rodney voice because the super chat asked for it because that's a serious question. Oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. I try and pull up a joke, and then someone asks me a serious question like that. Oh man, I'm telling you, I don't really know about the guy. I mean, I know he's there, you know, like give me a break or something. But oh man, I mean, it's a tough situation with that guy. Tough, oh real tough. He's been there for years. Oh man, and nobody's trying to get him out of there. I'm like, why? I'm telling you, he's getting no respect, really. Oh man.
But still, in all seriousness, I don't really know why the guy is still there. No one's really tried to get him out. He was a big deal a couple of years ago, and no one's really tried to exchange him for anyone yet. Maybe he's considered by the government unimportant enough. Maybe he didn't get enough press attention to make it serious enough to get him out of there. That may be part of it, but I really have no good logical answer as to why he has also not been exchanged for someone else to get him out of Russian prison. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well, and thank you once again for the support and sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, let's address the poll. Best pizza, it's gonna go to local store
By
at
a massive
53%. Bigly winner. 15% said Pizza Hut, 15% said Domino's, and 17% said Papa John's. Don't be a jerk. Get some Papa John's. Get it.
Oh man, I'm telling you this. It is good to know that Papa John's did win out amongst the big chains, but the local store won by a large margin. And I can't really blame anyone because the local store pizzas usually are better. But if you're talking about big chain brands, I do believe Papa John's has got to be the best one. Pizza Hut is bottom tier at this point. They used to be great. Like when I was a kid, we used to be a Pizza Hut family. You know, we got Pizza Hut all the time. But they went downhill. I mean, like, they went downhill bad, real bad. I don't know why I'm still talking like Rodney, like I'm doing things he would do. Oh, bad, real bad. But
man, the worst is Little Caesars, though. Ender Slayer is right. Little Caesars, I don't even know how that's considered pizza.
I wish we could play that meme, Matthew, of Squidward choking on a fork, because that's what it's like to eat Little Caesars, man.
It's cardboard.
Yeah, it's literal cardboard. It's just like, ew. And then, like, you know, the stories you hear from Little Caesars are just absolutely whack. You know, like someone whipping out a gun and killing the people behind the counter because their pizza was cold or something. You know, like, it's wild.
I guess it wasn't hot and ready. It was cold and not ready.
Man, I guess not. But still, with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. But finally, interesting to kill the pizza argument. The local chain store, well, the local stores beat out the chain stores. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Interesting choice of words there. You're going to kill it. But anyways, up next, we have a $10 super chat from DCC Prime 1, who says, told you that would be a good charity. Wink, wink. Slava Ukraine and Huram Slava.
And thank you so much for the support. And it was a great fundraiser, not only in what it does for Ukrainian soldiers, but also in the amount it was able to raise. And I've got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because of course, it is great to see the fundraisers running. It's also great to know that people keep us in mind and always make sure that we're able to keep this thing running, so that way we can keep on doing fundraisers, keep on covering the news. Because of course, y'all support helps massively in making sure that this thing keeps rolling. And I got to thank y'all so much once again. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. And thank you for supporting the Sunday fundraiser as well, which got blown out of the park. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
You know, another bad pizza, except for Little Caesars, would probably be the DiGiorno pizza out of the freezer.
Ew, yeah.
I can't stand that stuff. It tastes like preservatives.
It does. You know, Costco's frozen pizzas are not that bad, though.
Not too bad, but you gotta, like, you know, get the grease off of it and everything.
You just literally start dabbing that thing with a napkin to get the grease off of it. It's like, oh man, I'm telling you, this thing was swimming in grease. I grabbed it out of an indoor swimming pool. It was filled with grease. Oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. My arteries, they get no respect. They're clogging up down there. They're crying. They're going, help me, help me. And I sit there and I cram that pizza down my throat and I go, oh no, there's no help for you today. Oh man, I'm telling you. But still. With that, we are on. Charlie Nickel said, oh, here we go. Oh boy, here I go again, doing the voice that is the most contended one on the channel. Would you like it better if I did this one? I'm telling you, DiGiorno's pizza is the worst pizza to ever come out of frozen pizza. I've heard people saying they're throwing up in the bathrooms, bad bathrooms, porcelain toilets. It's terrible out there. I'm not a big fan. Not a big fan of DiGiorno. It's pretty bad. Tastes like cardboard. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to that guy. Yes, he is that guy who puts in a $10 super chat and says Matthew 7, and quote, "In giving, let not the left hand know what the right is doing." And I don't recall saying that, but thank you very much. That's a joke, by the way. That's just a joke.
In 2 Corinthians, in Corinthians 2, the Empire Strikes Back. But anyways, from that, I've got to thank you. Why in the world is everyone saying "take my wife" tonight? Like, what the hell's going on here? I've seen that from like 4 different people tonight. I saw that again.
It's
in
just
the
that one guy.
Oh well, I thought it was a different guy. I was like, what in the world is everyone wanting us to take their wives? We're not running a harem around here. Goodness. Wait a minute, Matthew just asked him. What the hell?
Yeah, he sounded like a little nuts.
Well, I mean, it is a little wild to be handing over wives like that. It's something. But anyways, can you reread that one again because that threw me off?
Yes, that guy said, Matthew 7, "In giving, let not the left hand know what the right is doing."
And I got to thank you for the support. And I would say that that's a fairly true quote. Unfortunately, I feel like I'm losing that one in translation. I don't know why, because I would know it at any other given time. But for some reason, I'm not really understanding it right now. But still, I've got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because your generosity to this channel helps us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And everyone's saying it's a Rodney reference. So
he's back. He's been allowed back in.
I'm so
we
sorry.
Didn't know.
I'm so sorry. We didn't know because I'm a big Rodney fan, but I've never heard that one. I'm so dang it. Now I feel like we're jerks. I'm sorry about that.
Watch him be like, "No, I actually meant it."
He's gonna be like, "Oh man, I'm telling you, take my wife, please. I'm telling you, get her out of here. It's not a thing or anything. I just want her gone. I hate her. Oh man, I'm telling you."
But with that, we are on. He's back. Rodney's mainline dude. Oh, I'm so sorry, man. We didn't know. But with that,
They're looking for us. So you're the Rodney person. You're supposed to know. I had no clue. I don't even know who Rodney really is.
I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about that. And I sat there and I kept on saying it. And then Matthew just actually after he brought it up, I was like, "What's he mean?" And then Matthew was like, "I know what he means," and then executed. I'm so sorry. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. I'm so sorry about that, but he back, and we're on to the next one.
I guess you could say that the fella there, he could say, "I get no respect around here. I get no respect."
Oh,
but
man,
he did get
I'm
some
telling
respect.
you.
He's back.
I'm telling
He's
you, I
back.
get no respect around here. I tried and throw around one of the punchline jokes. And you know what they did? They threw me out. Oh, man, I'm telling you, right on my ass. It was terrible. I've still got a scar back there. I'm telling you, they ripped it up wide open. But with that was actually bad sounding. That did not sound like you fell on the butt. That sounded like something else. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Jay Bagwell, who puts in a $10 super chat. And thank you very much, Jay, for being very generous and supporting the channel. He says, "A fun fact, the New York Police Department has offices in 14 countries. I sent the list to Matt if you want to see it." And funnily enough, Jay, we actually had a debate about that yesterday.
Yeah, we did. We actually did have a debate about that the other day, and we had to pull it up and show it to someone to prove to them that, yes, in fact, there are foreign offices for the New York Police Department. So that is actually a really interesting fun fact. But the big thing about the NYPD is that they're legally operating in other countries, unlike the Chinese, who are illegally operating in the United States, and we're not allowed to do that. But still, it is very wild to hear that, because people don't believe that when you say that. They're like, "What do you mean the city's police department operates around the world?" They just do. I mean, like, I don't know how to explain it, but they do. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I just see that someone laughed at an image. You may have seen that. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Jay. And also, cool Og.
Yes, very cool Og.
Very cool.
We do love, Enforcer loves bullpups.
Now, real quick though, side note. You pick up a bullpup, and then you pick up a normal rifle, and you can't really, you can't do that. Like, you can't switch over. Because once you start holding bullpups too much, or you go back to a conventional rifle, it feels like the weight's off. Like, then it doesn't feel like the bullpup's weird anymore. It feels like the conventional rifle's the weird one now.
Yeah, I wouldn't cross-train between the two. If you're actually, seriously trying to train on them, I wouldn't do it.
Nah, because your muscle memory is all screwed up, because the weight's balanced differently on each of them. Honestly, now, I don't know. I'm gonna hold judgment on that one until later, but it's still very interesting. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support. And also, thank you for helping this channel to keep on running, Jay, because support like that does help this channel to keep on rolling and helps us to keep on getting donuts and coffee and other cool things. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Vance Hicks, who puts in a $10 donation. He says, I have another question that I think about. If you get your knee or elbow blown off, how are the Russians and Ukrainians handling long-term care, and are they handling their long-term casualties?
I think the Russians get some limited medical care. It's not going to be anything amazing. And I think the Ukrainians get practically no medical care beyond the minimum to keep them alive. As far as I understand from what we've been seeing whenever prisoner exchanges occur, that appears to be the case. But then again, we don't really see a lot of wounded soldiers getting exchanged either from either side. So that would be my best guess. You know, and of course take that with a grain of salt because we don't really have a lot of hardcore information to back that up. But I do thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Psyops yet again. He puts in another $10 super chat. He says, can we get a big LSA hug for the pack rat? He says, love you, buddy, and hope you start feeling better soon. You're not alone in this, and you can do it. I believe in you. And Matt, can you show some cuddly rats on the stream?
Let's see. Ah, Miguel! Let's see. Giant rat.
I wish we could show that meme.
Giant rat. Okay, maybe not the
That's
one.
a capybara.
Yeah, that's just a capybara. I don't know what the hell this thing is. That it's got to be fake.
No.
That's,
it's a Halloween prop.
Oh, I was about to be like, that thing is fake. And we got a blue ribbon winning rat right here.
Oh, it's that landmine sniffing rat.
Oh, dude, this thing be going.
You already forgot about him.
And look at this thing. Oh my god.
Oh no.
That's a dog, man. That's no rat. That's a dog. Oh my god. That one actually kind of looks cute though.
Yeah, it looks cute for now, but not later.
And dude, this guy is looking down death. That thing bites him on the nose. Rabies. Like rabies on the spot, without question. There are a lot of demon rats on the Google images, like this one here. Dude, this thing drinks Red Bull in the morning every day. This thing ain't having a good day.
That's a 3D model rat.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what I said. It's like a 3D rat. Let's see here. Let's see. And this rat's combating wildlife trafficking in Africa. All right. I don't know how it's doing that. I guess it's got a little GAD on it, like a little Mac 11 or something. It just whips out to stop the animal trafficking. But man. Oh, dude, it's the rat! Oh my god, it's the rat! It's the guy
the guy that dressed up as a rat?
Yeah, it's the guy who sits there and says, I might be a rat, but I ain't no snitch, and all that stuff. It's him. Oh my gosh, it's him in the flesh. Dude, that's actually pretty funny, man. That is the giant rat. That has got to be the biggest rat.
That guy's borderline, those people that like to dress up as animals. He's borderline.
Yeah, kind of. And also, this one doesn't even really look that much like a rat. It looks more like I don't really know, a kangaroo, kind of like a tiny little itty bitty kangaroo. But still, I hope this does please the pack rat, the packer of rats. And I thank you so much once again for the support, Sibes. And I do wish pack rat the best of luck. I hope you do pull through because I believe, if I understand correctly, you had some medical issues back a while ago. I believe you said that. And if you're still going through that, I still wish you the best of luck. And I hope you're pulling through. And I hope this stream helps to pass the time as best as possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Sibes. And once again, I hope that everyone gives the best wishes to the pack rat, the packer of the rats. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
And also, Pack Rats, if you want to send me that picture, if you want us to show it on stream, at Enforcer Matt, number sign 0928. And I believe Syab just sent me something. Let me see if that is it. Let's see. Oh, it's something else. Let me make sure I mark that on red so I don't forget it. And also just send that to me, Pack Rats, if you want me to call that out or show it on the stream. But anyways, I'll keep a lookout for it. And up next, we have another $10 super chat from Psyops. And he says, there was an article on orcs killing endangered wildlife in the wildlife preserve in Ukraine by the Kyiv Post. Could you look that up and give your take? And the animals are critically endangered.
See, Russians poaching animals, Ukraine. Let me see if that will get it. looting Russians seen poaching a geese. That was in 2022. Poachers in Chernobyl. I can't find anything on it recently, but I do know what you're talking about because I have seen some pictures coming out from some of the wildlife preserves that are in, well, wildlife parks or reserves that are in Russian-occupied territory. And I have seen pictures of it. I couldn't find an article on it where they are killing and clearly showing all of the rare animals, the endangered species that they are killing behind the lines as game animals or trophy animals. And I would have to say that that is really sick when you think about it, because what type of benefit are these Russians getting? Because it appears that they're not even really killing them for food, they're just killing them for sport. So they're really just killing them because they're animals that live in Ukraine and they're endangered there. And so they're just killing them to spite the Ukrainians or something similar. And I think that's really wild. Also, on top of that, I heard that they were killing European hamsters. And in case if any of y'all don't know, hamsters living in the wild are actually endangered at this point. Not European animals, I'm looking for a European hamster. They're endangered. And while a lot of them live in pet stores, you know, as the domesticated variety, these, well, European hamsters right here are actually endangered. And they don't really live many places in the wild anymore. In fact, one of the most populated populations of European hamsters in all of the continent of Europe at this point is, believe it or not, the graveyards of Vienna, where they are left alone well enough that there are actually sizable colonies of these European hamsters there. And we have heard that they've even gone to the point of trying to kill the few hundred remaining European hamsters that live within these wildlife reserves in Ukraine. And obviously they have no purpose. It's not like you can eat these hamsters. It's not like they provide any kind of actual nutritional value, and they're really just killing them for the sport of it. So kind of sad to think, and these little things are really cute. When you see them, you know, that one's got some food and is taking it back to his little home. And it's sad to think that they're killing animals like these just for the hell of it, to try and wipe out anything of value that they can find in Ukraine. And look at this one. Look at that little fella. He's lost in the sauce.
Oh, look at that.
He's lost in the sauce. At least he's not like the hamster, you know, in the meme, Matthew, where they put him in front of some food and that thing just sat there fried, and then someone said hamster, and that was just the end of the meme. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that does address that fairly well.
And also, real quick, let's see here if I can get this sent over to you. Pack Rats did send us a picture of one of the rats that he has, and I believe it's eating a Cheez-It or some cheese or something, but it's in your Discord DM.
Yo, look at that thing. That thing be eating. That thing be munching.
I have a feeling that rat like might turn around and sell you like a stock in like 2 minutes or something. It has that look about it.
Dude, this thing
Would you like to buy a stonk?
Dude, that thing is on the grind set, man. You can tell it's thinking about like numbers. That thing is a numbers rat. But still, very cute rat, actually. I've got to be honest. I'm not really that big of a fan of most rats, but that's not a bad rat. That's actually a pretty cute little rat right there. I would pet it. I would really pet it. And so with that, very interesting to see, Pack Rat, that you got some real rats. And I got to ask you, do you pack these rats? Because your name is Pack Rat. Do you pack the rats? But with that, very cute rat. I do like the rat. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support and helping this. Oh, well, actually, thank you once again, Pack Rat. Psyops is the one who supported, but thank you, Pack Rat, for being an old guard of this channel and always being here every single day. I don't think you've missed many days of the stream because you're almost always here, and it's always great to see you in the first 10 minutes. I think sometimes I am able to say hey to you, but there are so many heys that come in at the beginning of the streams these days, it's hard to get to everyone. So if I ever miss you, don't ever think I'm ignoring y'all. It's usually just because there are like 10 of y'all who said hey at the same time, and I'm trying to respond to every single one of y'all, and sometimes some of y'all get missed. But I still wish I could say hey to every single one of y'all, and also, I love that rat. That was a nice rat. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And also... redo why he said looks just like my lawyer.
Oh, come on,
man, come on now, come on.
I'm turning into a lawyer, and I don't look like no rat. Someone's about to say we do, but
yeah, you just set yourself up.
Oh man, they're over there, they're running the news, and they look like a bunch of rats. That's probably gonna be the next thing we hear. Clip it.
Hey, look, I mean, we're not talking about looks, but there's a lot of subject matter right there.
Oh, but anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, Psyops, and also thank you, Pack Rat, for showing us your pack of rats. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Psyops once again. And Charlie Nikhil said, that's a shark. I don't think so. I'm just joking, but anyway. Up next, we have a $10 super chat from Psyops, and he says, Matt, Andrew, and Mr. Corgi, what would you think about me making a video involving me crushing a pinata of Putin with a bobcat for the $1 million fundraiser celebration, and I would send it to y'all?
I would think that'd be pretty cool, actually. I would watch that. I would probably show that. As long as it stay PG, I would show it. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Sibes. That has got to be like the 5th super chat Sibes has sent in tonight. And I thank you so much for him because it does help us to keep this channel rolling. And without him, Sibes, this channel would not be possible. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Chase Matty, who says, let's see. Hey guys, was that confirmed that big planes full of VDV were shot down on the way to Hostomel in the first days of the invasion? If so, that is badass.
And I thank you so much for the support, Chase Matty. And to answer that question, sadly, the IL-76s that were actually airborne and on standby to land at the Hostomel airfield within the first day of the war, they never got shot down, and they also, from what we understand, they never successfully landed either. They actually, if y'all didn't know, the Hostomel runway was actually carpet bombed by Su-24 bombers within the first day of the Battle of Hostomel, and so the airfield was never usable. And Ilyushin 76 attempted to land there twice, actually, without being shot down, but it was never able to land due to the damage of the runway. But we did hear at one point that an IL-76 that was trying to drop off paratroopers near Vasilkiv in this area was actually shot down with all of the VDV on board being lost because the plane broke up mid-flight, and from what we understand, most of their parachutes did not deploy, and the ones that did were usually, well, almost all of them were lit up once they hit the ground, and I think that was just like maybe 3 or 4 dozen of them. So none of them were ever shot down that were supposed to land at Hostomel. Filled with the VDV, but the VDV did get shot down about maybe 2 or 3 weeks later near Vasilkiv when the Russians stupidly tried to drop off paratroopers there. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Chase Matty. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And the next one goes to Dupper Bob, who puts in a $5 donation, and he says, Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much, Dupper Bob, for the support. And of course, Slava Ukraini. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to White Lightning 777, who puts in a $5 donation and says, did that Donbass Vabushka actually do anything illegal, or is she just a sleazy Z bot?
Can you give me some context to that, Matthew? Do you know who that's talking about?
So I believe the Donbass Vabushka is this lady who apparently was working with the Russians and somehow exposed some classified documents, but I'm not exactly sure.
I don't really know a lot about that story. I'd have to declare ignorance on that one, really, because we don't know what happened to that woman. And I didn't really hear about that woman either. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, or at least declare why I cannot really answer that fairly well. And with that, I actually saw, I believe, Serge Segeli say, I'm not sure where you got your info there. And also Avari said, I thought the runway was bombarded with artillery. I actually got the statement about the Su-24 bombers carpet bombing the runway from Starsky during an interview. And since he was there, I took that for what it was. I took that at face value. I was like, okay, well, he was there. And so if he's saying Su-24s bombed the runway and cratered it where it couldn't be used, that must have been what happened. So that's where I got the information from, just in case y'all are wondering. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well as well. And with that, well, we are on to the next one. Well.
All right, and the next one goes to Oleg Buryeko, who puts in a $5 donation and says something in another language, which translates, translates to death to enemies.
And reread that one again.
It translates to death to enemies.
Well, I thank you for the support, and it's interesting here that does translate to death to enemies. I don't know what's translating to death to enemies, but interesting to hear nonetheless. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Cliff H, who puts in a $5 donation and says, Enforcer Matt, a.k.a. the politician, with the P-O-L-L part emphasized. And I guess you could say that I am a politician. But thank you very much, Cliff, for the support and helping us to keep the lights on. And pretty cheeky joke, I gotta say. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from DC Dominator 05. He says, if it came down to how well and how long do you think Russia and China would last in a non-nuclear war against the U.S. and main protectors of it?
Let's see. Reread. What happened? Reread the line.
He says, if it came down to how well and long do you think the Russia and China would last in a non-nuclear war against the U.S. and main protectors of it?
And now, if it was a war in between Russia and China, I believe it would actually last a little bit of a while. We would most likely focus on Europe first, and then focus on China second, because the U.S. Navy could operate almost entirely on its own without need for the Army or the Marines to be involved in Asia for a good while, kind of like how World War II went down. It would be a land war in Europe first, and then land war would begin in Asia in a large part at the later end of that war. We would be able to take on the Russians really with no problem whatsoever if we were weighing the entire force of the ground and the ground forces and the air force against them. We could probably overpower them and defeat them in a non-nuclear war quite quickly. Probably the only place we would get any real resistance would be Moscow, but even that's questionable because, you know, it's Russia. And also, it's the United States we're talking about, so it's not really like it's a weak military or anything. It is the largest and strongest military in the world by technological figures and also numbered figures. The Chinese would be a little bit of a different story because we would have to win the war at sea first before we ever went on to land. And that could take some time and also incur a decent amount of losses. And on top of that, the Chinese would be fighting on their coastline, and we would have to be creating supply lines that stretch all the way from the United States across the Pacific to that area to keep the Navy running. So that could start to get a little difficult. That could get fairly difficult once that started to progress on further beyond the initial phases. But I have a feeling we could defeat the Chinese at sea because we do have a superior submarine force that's far more technologically advanced than the Chinese submarines could ever be, and our surface fleet is far more capable and far more potent than the Chinese fleet is. Once again, the Chinese do have about 430 surface vessels, which does outnumber the U.S. Navy, but around 114 of those are motor torpedo boats with really no air defense on them, and so they should be fairly easy, if not literally a cakewalk to destroy. And then they're down to about 300 surface vessels, and then of that, a good amount of them are corvettes and lightly armored, so those could also be destroyed fairly easier, but it wouldn't be as easy as destroying the motor torpedo boats. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. But in reality, if you're asking about a time frame, I would say you'd probably be looking at a war that would last maybe 2 to 3 years. Would be my estimate. And once again, that's crystal balling a lot, but that would just be a ballpark estimate in my opinion. Maybe 2 to 3 years to fight both of them. And then, of course, you have to weigh in that Europe will most likely be involved as well, except for France, because France will be going, oh, we like a China, you know, or something like that. So the rest of Europe would get involved except for France, and then you would also have to weigh in how much quicker would that make the war end. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you once again for the support. We are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Charlie Nickel. He puts in a $10 super chat and says, Papa John's isn't food. He says, okay, the horse is dead. No need to even respond.
Charlie? Charlie, though?
Peter?
What?
Peter, the horse is dead.
What, Lois? What do you mean? But anyways, thank you for the support, Charlie, and well, I guess since the horse is dead now, we can't really comment on it. Man, it's a shame. I would comment on it, though, but you know, we can't. The horse is dead. Let's strap up some electrodes to it and see if we can get a response. I'm just kidding, but still, thank you once again for the support, Charlie. I guess that is your opinion, and with that, we're on to the next one. Very discouraged. I'm very dissuaded, though, Charlie. I hate to hear that, but we're on to the next one.
Yes, he's hoyt. But anyways, up next, we have a $5 super chat from Ivan P. He says, Domino's Pizza tastes like cardboard, and everyone knows it. Here's money for the drone fund, and can't wait to watch you guys during the counteroffensive.
And I thank you for the support. I can't wait for the counteroffensive either. Hopefully it'll be a massive success like many people think it will be. I think it will be a massive success. And also, thank you so much for enjoying this channel and supporting us to keep it running. Of course, Y'all help us to keep this thing. Y'all don't just help us. Y'all are the reason we can keep rolling because y'all do support us. We are greatly appreciative of that. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to White Lightning 777, who puts in a $5 donation and says, "Why doesn't your channel have the option to buy memberships for others?"
We do not have the option to buy memberships because memberships are monetizing a little bit too much in our opinion. We would rather just have it as super chats because then it's not being pushed. Because if you ever go into a channel where they do have memberships, the first thing that ever happens when you click on that channel is that it pops up this pop-up window that asks you if you want to become a member. And I feel like that is asking too much from every single viewer. It makes it feel like when you get on that stream, you have to pay to be there. And then it also it just seems too monetized to me, way too monetized. And that's why we don't do it. Of course, we always make sure to let folks know that y'all support is the only way to help us keep this running, because it is the only way to keep it running. And of course, we always have to let people know that, because unlike other channels where it seems like they run on thin air, which is really just sponsorships and ads, we don't run on any of that. We just run directly through y'all's support. But at the same time, we also don't want to make it seem like we are out here just running this thing for money alone, because we really aren't. Of course, the support, we have to have support because that's the only way we can keep it running. But at the same time, I don't want anyone to sit there and have us go, "Hey, you got to get a membership, man." And then when you're sitting there and you don't get a membership, you're like, "Man, I mean, like, I look like a subhuman in the live chat because I don't have the little membership stars or whatever, and I don't like that." And also it makes the live chat look cheesy because you got like star number 1 for the guy who's putting in like $20 a month, and then he looks like he's just well up above everyone else who's there. I don't like that much. That's just my opinion on it. That's why we don't have anything like that. And we've seen other channels, we've seen it in practice, and then we have people come over here and that complain to us about those channels, and they're like, "Man, like, they have like members only live chats now, because they started it and then they got into it and they're like, oh, and so they have like membership only live chats, and I don't like that at all. I don't like the concept of that. And this stream is absolutely free, and while we of course have to have viewer support to survive, I never want anyone to feel like when they come in here they have to pay. I don't want anyone to feel like that. You can watch this thing absolutely free for the entire 419 days we've been running and never have to watch an ad, never have to watch a sponsor, never even have to support us. It is absolutely free, and I want to make sure we keep it that way. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that does address why fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Trister1. He puts in a $10 super chat, and also good night to you, Cyps, as well. I saw he was getting off for the night. And good night. And Trister says, "Brussels sprouts fun for the boys."
And thank you so much once again for the support. And thank you for the Brussels sprouts fun, because it is nice to be healthy. And of course, without some Brussels sprouts every once in a while, we wouldn't be able to be healthy. I like my Brussels sprouts with feta cheese, although that sounds really high end. It's really not. You can get it for $4 at the store. But I do love Brussels sprouts when cooked right. I don't like them boiled. Boiled Brussels sprouts are just nasty. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Landlubber, who puts in a $1 super chat and does not leave a comment. But Landlubber, thank you very much for your support and to help keep us running. And with that being said, we are out of super chat questions, so we are moving on to our live chats. And it looks like the first one we have is going to be from D.L. Hemingway, who says, "Enforcer, I wonder if we're giving them enough to build an armored brigade combat team. I've been running the numbers."
I think we have, because they are raising 9 brand new brigades, and from what we understand, those are most likely going to be fielded with Western weaponry. They're not going to be fielded entirely with Leopard 2s and Abrams. A large bulk of those numbers are going to be PT-91 but it is Western equipment nonetheless. So I think we are giving them enough to field several brigades worth, at least from the numbers we've been getting, but take that with a grain of salt, because just because they're saying that doesn't mean that they are entirely with Western weaponry. It may just be that there is a company or two in every single brigade, or maybe a battalion or two in every single brigade that has Western equipment entirely, and then the rest of them may be Soviet vintage. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Very good point, though, and I would highly suggest running those numbers and making sure to keep that in mind, because it may be that there isn't enough equipment for that, and if not, we might want to see about getting them some. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Pole, who says, don't forget to mention the Japanese bodyguard of the Prime Minister. Did you see the video? Very quick reaction. And I actually saw that video yesterday, and that guy did react really quick. He whipped out some kind of bulletproof shield. He like threw the Prime Minister away from the what they thought was a bomb at the time, and it turned out to be a smoke bomb. And then he kicked the thing away. So he was pretty quick.
And yeah, he was really quick. And I also liked how the bodyguards just grabbed this guy and they said, "Hey guys, I'm here introducing the ShamWow. Watch, we're gonna drag him across the gravel, and you're gonna watch all of his blood soak up into the rocks. Look, wow, it's amazing. Look, and when you wring him out, just more blood. Look at that."
And they smeared him on the ground like butter.
Listen, everyone likes a good kick in the head, right? Look, you can kick this guy in the head right here. Next thing we're gonna be introducing is the slap chop. People are gonna love my nuts. But anyways, moving on from the whole slap chop ShamWow guy. Yeah, so I have to say the bodyguard's reaction was impeccable when that happened. For it being a split second, they flipped around and went to work immediately. And so I would have to say it was great, not just on that guy's end, but also on the entire team's end, especially when they started dragging him across the ground. Not only was that funny, but it was also kind of deserving for what happened to Shinzo Abe just a little while ago. I'm sure that was on everyone's minds on the security team when they threw that smoke grenade at him. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Great question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Kieran Mooney, who says, Enforcer, how do Torties compared to the T90?
Twardies compared to the T90 a little bit. Let me pull up the PT91 and then we'll go to the T90A. So the T90, and now everyone loves to show the picture of the T90Ms. These are the smallest numbers of T90s that exist. There's T90As and Ms. There are far more T90As than there are T90Ms, but this is the one they want you to think exists in large numbers now. The real ones look like this. This is mostly what the Russian army is made up of in their T90 force. And from what we understand, the PT91 Twardy compares better in some categories from what we understand. And of course, this is all from what we understand. We don't have exact details and figures on what these tanks are capable of, but this one should compare somewhat well to a T90A, at least in terms of its optics, maybe even better, because they are Western optics, and the Western world has better computer technologies, and so their optics graphics are probably better, or their optics resolution is better than the T90s would be. But in terms of armor, we do believe that the T90A does outclass the PT91 Twardy by a little bit. But then again, one has to remember, if your armor is good, but you can't see the enemy first, and the enemy gets off the first shot, the armor probably isn't going to count, because there's going to be spalling inside of the compartment for the most part. Someone will be wounded, and then they'll be bailing out of the tank if they get hit first. So as long as the PT91 is able to utilize its optics better, and we assume that its optics are better, it usually will have an upper hand, a very, very small upper hand on the T90. If the T90 somehow glances the first shot, and then then the crew actually does not bail, and they start looking for the enemy tank, the PT91 Twardy could probably be in trouble. But it's not going to be that much of a difference really in between the two. I would say the PT91 Twardy is just it's on par or a little bit below par compared to a T90, at least in terms of the technology and the armor protection it has combined in comparison to the T90. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. Once again, almost working entirely off of what we can see and what we know about these vehicles, because we don't have any exact technical information about the specs of the, I guess I say ergonomics, or the equipment of the T90 versus the PT91. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next question goes to Barreled50, who says, question for you, Abrams or Bradley, and which one would you two drive? And I'm personally taking an Abrams, because the Bradley, it's a nice fighting vehicle, but Abrams is a tank, so I'm going to take that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say the tank I would take would be the Abrams, because the Bradley isn't even a tank, it's an IFV, so they kind of like limited down my option fairly well. I would take the Abrams because it has far more armor. It also has a better punching gun, and while TOW2s are good, it does have flight time, and that flight time's a little scary when you think about it, because it's taking much longer for that round to make it to target. So I would rather have an Abrams instead because it has better better firepower, better armor, and also from what we understand, it may even have a little bit better maneuverability than the Bradley as well. It may be able to get up to a higher top speed and get there a little bit quicker from what we may know, but take that for a grain of salt. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Great question, by the way, really good one, but I would also take an Abrams. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are moving on to the next one. And also, Serge Segeli said, I really wish you guys would use other sources besides turning to Wikipedia. This isn't something we used to say a long time ago. We use Wikipedia on stream because we can't really go find vetted sources and read books live on air. So if we don't know something, we have to find the quickest answer we can. Otherwise, we don't really have any answers at all, and we would rather have an answer that would be in the ballpark of being correct than no answer whatsoever sometimes. So with that, hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Steve Hughes. He says, Matt, how long until the Abrams gets to Ukraine?
Let's see, the Abrams gets to Ukraine. We really have no idea. We heard they accelerated the training program, so assuming it'd be quicker than it would have been, but we still really have no idea. We do know that there are Abrams in Poland. We haven't seen anyone really training on them yet, and they may just be in stockyards or something somewhere, or motor pools, but we have not seen them going into training yet, at least in Poland, and we have not seen them in Ukraine yet either. So we don't really know when they're getting there at this point, but I would assume maybe 2 months, 2 to 3 months. So with that, I hope that does answer that fairly well, at least the best we know. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next question goes to Jerry East, who says, look at the Swedish military Volvo Valp.
The Swedish Volvo Valp.
Yes, V-A-L-P.
V-A-L-P, the Volvo Valp.
That's a Scooby-Doo van, a little bit upgraded.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo. Like, Zoink Scoob, we're in Sweden. Ruh-roh, Raggy, your should warm me. I don't know what Swedish sounds like, honestly. But, that is interesting. I don't know what to think of this one. It's a box. It's literally a box.
I mean, it looks better than the... This isn't the Scooby-Doo van, is it? Like, this is a different one?
This is different than the Scooby-Doo van.
Yeah, it looks better, somewhat, but it's still a little bit,
Yeah, I mean, it looks better, but to be honest, not by a lot. I would have to be honest with you. This thing's aesthetic is kind of a little rough to the eyes. Goodness. Here, let me type in Rush Scooby-Doo van just to remember what we're comparing this thing to. That is literally the Scooby-Doo van. You can't get any more Scooby-Doo than that. So yes, I would say it looks better than this thing, but it doesn't look better than anything else, really. Also, spotted across the Ukrainian border moments ago. Just a literal, like, old RV. Oh, man. Oh, look, there it is! Like, Zoink Scoop! This doesn't feel like a military exercise.
Oh my god.
Oh man.
Oh, who made that?
I don't know, but it's good. It's good. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And also, Packrat said, it's the mystery machine of Volkswagen. Yes, it is. It's the Volkswagen bus. But the Volkswagen bus also looks a lot like the Soviet Scooby-Doo van as well. I don't know. Actually, I think it might really be... hang on. We got to get to the bottom of this now. Scooby-Doo van. So I got to be honest with you here. I think it may actually be the Soviet one. Because when you look at it, like the real Scooby-Doo vans in the shows, like this one, they don't have the rear windows of the VW bus.
I think it might be a Dodge.
Soviet Scooby-Doo van. One second, let me go over here. So if you look at this one, and you look at that one.
Are you telling me that Scooby-Doo and the gang were Soviet?
I think they may have been communists.
Uh-oh.
They're damn commies! But, oh my god! Like, it's not a VW bus. It can't be, because this one has too many windows. This one does not. It has the front windshield and the side door windows, and this one also has the same.
Could it be possible that, you know, they were going around in the Soviet van, like, conducting espionage? That's why they were, like, you know, searching everywhere?
You know, is that why their enemies were always the wealthy people who were trying to, like, buy something?
Oh, no.
Is that why?
Oh, no.
I think we got down to the bottom of this tonight. Scooby-Doo and the gang are communists. And then they're traveling the country in the Mystery Machine because they're trying to outdo the capitalist dogs. So it appears that we have gotten to the bottom. And also, look at the headlights. The headlights in the VW bus and this thing are almost in the same spot. They're pretty low to the van, but interesting.
Wait. You remember in that one episode they showed the back of the van and it had like all that equipment back there and stuff, like the little satellite dish like circling around and everything?
Oh my God, they're
commies,
man. They're working for the Soviet Union.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Someone said it's a Dodge A100. It better be, because we're about to have these people arrested for espionage. So let's go see what the Dodge A100 looks like. I'm not seeing it. I gotta be honest with you. I'm not seeing it here because it's close, yes, but not quite. You see, this one's shorter. The Scooby-Doo van here is shorter. This one's kind of long looking. And also, look at this. Look, this is the main giveaway here. This thing doesn't have a grill. This one does. This one does not. Well, it has a very small one.
A small one, yeah.
A very, very small one. I don't know, y'all. I think we've gotten down to the bottom of this thing. They're damn commies. Every single one of them. They're running a pinko rag out of that thing. They're running a pinko rag out of that thing. But yeah, it looks like they're commies. We've now figured that out. So thank you everyone for coming tonight. We've really gotten down to the bottom of things. We solved the Ukraine war, and we also figured out that Fred and the gang are commies.
Wait a minute. A bot just came in here and said, "This is delusion trying to justify why Ukraine hasn't won yet." What are they joking?
Wait a minute. Fred from Scooby-Doo. Hang on. I think this is the biggest giveaway. We got ourselves a pioneer here. He's wearing the Pioneers ascot. Pull up the young pioneers, Matthew. Soviet young pioneers. My God.
Oh my God.
Freddie's a part of the young pioneers. Get this man.
My God.
Call up the cops.
It might be true.
Call up the cops. And we need to go get this man. This man is a young pioneer gallivanting around the country with his little red book in the commie van. He's gathering up people.
Oh, and that other girl was a hippie.
Wait a minute. Hang on. Let me think about that. Scooby and Shaggy, Matthew. Scooby is not a happy little dog that can talk. He's a Russian Soviet training program to get a talking dog to conduct espionage.
No, Shaggy was actually from America. He was just he was like scooped up by the others because they needed a guide to show them around to the like sensitive sites, and Shaggy was gullible enough to believe it.
You know what? We're looking right here at a bunch of scared communists. That's what we're looking at right here. That's the case. That's the case. But Scooby-Doo, he didn't come from America, man. You know, he came from the borders of East Germany. That thing mauled some people trying to cross the border, and then they brought him over here. That's what's happening here. We got ourselves some commies.
That dog came out of a lab.
That dog did come out of a lab. I'm telling you. And then she's the brains of the operation right here. He may be the young pioneer. And look, they removed the ascot here because they figured out it was too much of a giveaway for him to look literally like a young pioneer. That's how they removed the ascot. But she's the brains of the operation. She was working in the Soviet Ministry of Information. And she's come over to make sure that the gang knows where they're supposed to be going and what missions they have. They're commies. Oh, they're commies. So with that, we got to the bottom of it, y'all. They may have not gotten to the bottom of the mystery, but we got to the bottom of who's the real young pioneer here. And so with that, I hope y'all enjoyed that fairly well. That's probably one of the funniest rabbit holes we've ever done, really, looking at that introspectively. And with that, we are on to the next. I can't believe it, man. He literally looks like a young pioneer.
He does, and they kept Shaggy stoned so that way he never realized what was happening.
Like, Soing Scoob, I never knew you worked for East Germany. Get off me, actually.
Oh God!
And then he gets put on trial for war crimes. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to David L., who says, "Matt, how many Russian embassies are in the U.S. and how many ambassadors Should the U.S. consider closing and expelling more of their embassies, or would retribution by Russia be worse?
Let's see. The Russian Federation's diplomatic body has 4 separate consulates and 1 embassy. The Russian embassy is located in Washington, D.C., and has a consular department as well. So where are the Russian consular departments? Where are the Russian consular consulates? Let's see here. Does Russia have a consulate? Yes, they do. Is it the only one in Washington? Let's see. They have one in New York. I'm not one to click on any of these websites. They have one in Houston, and they also have one in oh wait, no, that's DC. So we know of one in Houston, we know of one in New York, and we know of one in Washington. So it appears that 2 of the consulates are on the East Coast. I'm supposing the other 2 would probably be on the West Coast, and then the embassy is, of course, in Washington, D.C. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well without clicking on any of those websites. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Enderslayer, who says, did you know that Russians are loot and sending stuff back to Russia again? They did it before the Ukrainians took the land back.
Can you reread that one again?
He says, did you know that Russians, I think I'm going to say Russians are looting and sending stuff back to Russia again. They did it before the Ukrainians took the land back.
Yes, they have been doing that a lot. The most famous thing they've ever stolen was washing machines and toilets. So yes, we did know that. And so with that, I thank you once again for the question. I hope we answered that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And we have a super chat from Trister1 once again. He puts in a $2 donation and says, just because Enforcer said zoinks.
Thank you for the support, Chester. And I can't believe it. Like, of course, we're just kidding. Because, you know, Scooby-Doo was just a funny show. I watched it a lot as a kid. I actually liked Scooby-Doo, like the old OG one. You know, that where they had like a $5 animating budget per week. Like that was probably the best Scooby-Doo they ever made. Like the newer ones, like Scrappy sucked. Like I don't care what anyone says, Scrappy just sucked as a character. And they actually killed him off. Like that's a huge thing in like Scooby-Doo lore is that they don't like Scrappy or whatever his name was. But yeah, I mean, like, Scooby-Doo was not that bad of a show. I'm just kidding about Scooby-Doo, of course. So, you know, I know that someone's about to take that whole thing seriously about us calling them commies and stuff. I mean, like, the evidence is very compelling, I will have to say. But at the same time, it's just a funny show. And so that, zoinks! And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a question from Loren Notsky, who says, have you two young fellows ever watched Euro Trip or the Dictator movies? And
we have
I
not.
don't think we have.
We have not. And so, thank you thank you once again for asking that question, but sadly, we haven't, so there's not really a lot for me to add. But with that, we are on to the next one. Barrel 050 said, nope, it's commie now. They're commies now. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Vito, who says, does Ukraine have approval to fully modify Bradleys or just approved to change its livery?
I think they probably are getting that Bradley at that moment, and they painted it up before it entered Ukraine. But we don't really know like a lot of the details surrounding that picture. We just know it's a Bradley in Ukrainian pixelated camo on the truck bed somewhere traveling. But we don't know a lot more than that. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a super chat from Sharon Flynn, who puts in a $20 donation and says, how'd your presentation go, and you gonna graduate?
I gotta tell you, Sharon, my education is going real good. And I went and did the mathematics,
and I think I'm going to graduate. Actually, I did the oral part of the presentation today, where I had to get up and do the presentation. Paper hasn't been submitted yet. That actually comes in, I think, 10 days or so. But I actually got an email from that professor. I don't know if he's watching the show right now. Hopefully he is. Maybe he'll give me bonus points for doing this for 3.5 hours every night, you know, every week for 6 days. But I actually got an email, and he said that it was the mark of a perfect presentation, and said he said that it must be from running the YouTube channel. He literally said something like that. I'm not going to read it word for word, but it was a really good email, and apparently I set the bar in that class, because there's like about 14 other people that have to present, of what the presentation should look like. And I was like, hell, if I didn't, I don't know what I would be doing, because I've been covering this for 419 days. So really I was just getting up and doing my show for about 8 minutes live. We're really just making a YouTube video like I normally do, where I just talk stuff out and show it. So it went really well. That part went well. It's just that the essay itself, that's another monster that has to be written and done and all that. So yeah, hopefully that goes well. I would hope it goes well because that would suck to not graduate when I've made it this far. But it's going good. Rather than that, all the other finals, they're kind of coming together, getting done, all that stuff. So hopefully it all does come together. I'm hoping. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Sharon, and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, we're going to throw that one to the coffee fund. Because I need me some coffee. I just ran out of busy tonight, actually. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And Jim Calamari said, Enforcer is modest. Well, I'm reading this guy's thing. He said it was the perfect presentation. That's literally what he said. Word for word, it was the perfect presentation. And I'm hoping that it would be, because what the hell would I be doing up here running this show if it wasn't a good presentation? But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. We are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
People used to say I killed the presentation back in the day when I used to go to college. But not anymore because I only have 2 classes. But anyways, we're moving on to our next one. Also check your Discord DMs. It's just a pretty funny message just on the live chat. Check it off screen though. And let me know what you think.
Let's see here. I'm checking it. I want to read that off, man. The Winston Churchill voice. I hated Scrappy Doo. Glad they glassed the bastard. That was hilarious. We're not gonna call out shit that in. That's gonna be the funniest thing I've ever heard anyone say about Scrappy. I hated Scrappy, honestly. Like I have to say this. A lot of shows have run into this problem, and they call this trope. I believe it's like the Mary Sue or something like that. You can't have a Mary Sue because they just ruin shows. Like Scrappy, what the hell, Beverly Crusher on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Those characters become hated because they just ruin the show. Because while everyone else is having a challenge with something, this one random character can just walk in and haha, they're just that character, so the problem solved. It's like, that is poor writing. Like Mary Sue characters, terrible writing. It doesn't matter like what it's in. You got to have characters with real challenges. You just can't have someone waltz in and like win, because then it's not a fun story. So it's like I hated Scrappy. I think Scrappy is the original Mary Sue character I can think of. Beverly Crusher was probably the next one in line if we're talking about like a timeline here. Yeah, I'm glad that nobody. I'm glad you agree with me, Ukester. Nobody likes Scrappy. I don't think anyone likes Scrappy. And so with that, I hope that addresses that very well. We're on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a super chat, this time from Sharon Flynn, who puts in a $20 donation once again. It says, kudos, you'll kill the essay.
And hopefully I will. Killing the essay is the hard part, because finding the time is the hard part to write the essay. It's a 12-page essay. Not as bad as another class that had me write a 20-page essay that the prompt was hyper-politicized on. And y'all know I'm not really a big fan of politics. I'm honestly not a big fan of politics off-stream. And of course, sometimes in college you have to write to the whims of the professor, so I have to sit there and write up this thing, and I'm like, I don't really like that. I'd rather just look at this neutrally. But no, it is what it is. That was really annoying to me. But anyways, hopefully I'll kill the essay in this class, because I try my hardest to write these things, but when you have very limited time, very small amount of hours to off stream to do anything, it becomes tough. Like today, I got up and went to college. I got down on this computer and started doing stuff when it was time to start doing the stream. That's how busy I was today with everything else, is that I never even sat down on this computer until I had to start making the show tonight. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for having faith in me, Sharon, for hopefully doing good on the essay, because while I kill at oral presentations, the essays are a lot more difficult for me, especially in time constraints. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And we are on to the next one. And Sir Segelli said, if you don't like politics, then law school is not for you. I'll say this. Law school isn't really about politics. It's more about the conducting of just law. But one thing that I do not like, and when I say I don't like politics is a thing and it has to be addressed and done with. But modern politics is just so hard to get into, because it doesn't really make a lot of logical sense, really, to be honest with everyone, on both sides. Because the positions are sometimes just completely nonsensical, like, like contradictory from one statement to the next, even in one political group. And then it's also if you're not with me, you're against me kind of thing nowadays. So it's like, God, it's tough to get into. Like, I'm sure y'all know every other channel about there, it seems, and I'm not saying it's every single one of them, but it seems like almost every other channel but us loves to just dive into politics head first whenever they can, and it's just crazy to sit there and see people of different backgrounds just asking for death on the other one. It's like, wow, that's just wild. It's like, I don't really think this is serious enough to be asking for people to be taken out into the street and strung up with piano wire, but apparently people these days get into that heavily, and I'm not really a big fan of that. So with that, and also someone's about to say, yeah, it's that other party. No, it's both. It's both. I promise you. I've seen it from both. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another super chat from Sharon Flynn, who puts in a $20 donation and says, tell your professor what they want to hear so you graduate, but think for yourself. F them professors.
Well, dang, okay. Time for me to fail. The professor who's logically like, and it's an F. It's an F. He's failed. But still, thank you for the support, Sharon. And I will make sure, well, actually, I did make sure to write whatever they wanted to hear. Because in college, you learn if someone has a lien, you got to write to it. Because if you don't,
I did the opposite of that.
Oh, well, yeah, I've been in a class where I didn't write to their leaning, I just wrote neutrally, and then they start marking off because you don't agree with them, and I'm like, that's lame. I thought college was all about free thinking, and then you go into one professor's class to the next, and they're wanting you to pretty much think the way they think, otherwise marks are taken off against you. But yeah, I did write exactly the way they wanted, because it's like, whatever, it's just for a grade, I'll just do it. But I do think for myself, that's one thing that's kind of big about this channel, because some other channels like just regurgitate stuff that they read from the internet, like the Ministry of Defense, the ISW, stuff like that. The big thing about this channel is that we have never gone and stooped to the level of just reading off other people's opinions and trying to market them as our own. I come up with my own opinions, and sometimes it completely goes against the grain with other people, and I'm willing to make the stand if I'll die on that hill until I'm wrong. I'll make my own opinion, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm right, I'm right. Most of the times, whenever we've gone against the grain, we have ended up being right. Sometimes, though, we are wrong, and we've had a couple of times like that, but I would rather think for myself any day than just sit there and agree with people, because that's just boring. Anyone can do that. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Sharon. I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the support.
And the next one goes to Philip Fixes, who puts in a $2 donation, and he says, a pup named Scooby-Doo was amazing.
And I haven't actually seen a pup named Scooby-Doo. I gotta be honest with you there. But I will try and check it out. I remember, though, one of them, you may remember this movie, Matthew. It was the one with Scrappy-Doo in it, and they were like in the Himalayas or something, and they were unleashed these like ghouls from a box or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that one.
Scrappy-Doo ruined that movie. It wasn't even good because of that dog. They should have just punt kicked that thing. Anyway, so with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next question comes from the live chat, and it goes to Carl Elwell, who says, you all heard about the A-29C Super Tucanos that we're sending to Ukraine.
I haven't heard that we're sending them to Ukraine, but I would say they would be very interesting to send. This is actually a modern, if I'm correct, turboprop close air support aircraft that was built specifically for export. I believe, if I remember this, it is an Embraer. I think it is American made. I'm trying to think about that. Let me go back and let me check. It's Brazilian. I was about to say it was Brazilian, which just kind of throws in a little bit of a question to it because Brazil is kind of pro-Russia. But it is a very interesting aircraft for a modern age of air support where loiter time is needed, but at the same time it kind of calls in for older technology combined with new tech. It is a very interesting aircraft. I don't think these will be sent to Ukraine, however, considering they're Brazilian design and most likely Brazilian produced. But it is an interesting vehicle nonetheless, and I would say it would be a very interesting thing to see it on the battlefield in Ukraine, but I have a feeling that's most likely going to be unlikely. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another super chat from Charlie Nickel. He puts in a $2 super chat, and he says, oops. Sorry, butt dial.
And thank you.
How do you butt dial a super chat? How's that work?
and then he butt dialed the oops, sorry, butt dial part 2. But thank you for the support, Charlie. And it's okay. Butt dials are fine. Everyone does it. I remember that one. Have you ever seen that police body cam, Matthew, where that kid butt dialed while playing like Rainbow Six, and he said, "Yeah, I killed 2 guys," and then they came out to his house with a whole SWAT team.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think.
and then he had to call his mom. And he was like, "Hey, I butt dial," and there's a whole SWAT team out here now. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for support, Charlie. And with that, we were, I think, back into the live chats.
And yes, we are. And this one goes to Beeps, Eats, and Finding Food, and also Finding Some Treasure. He says, "Do you think that? Wait a minute. Do you think that was Pootler in the news release or body double?"
And can you reread that one again?
Do you think that that was Pootler in the news release or another body double?
I would say, and maybe another body double. But I'm always on the fence with that because he's supposedly dying, so he may be bloating because he's dying. I don't really know. But I would say maybe another body double. And so with that, I hope he answers that fairly well. And with that, also another thing I like to address, because I saw that 420 said the only criticism I have, and I wanted to address this real quick because it's a valid, I guess you could say, statement, but there is a reason why we do this. And the only criticism I have is prioritization of super chats comments over the broad support by chat. Overall, solid concept and stream. The reason why we run the stream that way is because if we treat supporters that actually support the channel like they're just kind of in the backlog, we don't get supported. We may not get supported, and then people, they don't support the stream, and it's the only way we get supported. And then the thing dies, or we have to go run ads, or we have to go run sponsors. And I would rather just let the thing die before we run ads or sponsors, because then I feel like that's really cheesy, and I feel like that's selling out. So whenever anyone supports the channel, and we're very appreciative because people can watch absolutely free, and that's something that's very easy to do. It's much harder for people to decide, yes, I do enjoy this channel and I would love to support them, and then they figure out how much they want to support us. So we always want to make sure to read off their comments first, because they are the ones who make it possible for us to run each night, and we also want them to know that we're very appreciative of them helping us to be able to do this as a job, and if they have any questions or comments, we always make sure to read them off. So that's why we do it that way. It's not that, it is not for really any other reason. We just want the people who actually help the stream to keep running. We want them to know we're greatly appreciative. So with that, I hope that addresses why we do that, because every once in a while questions and comments come up like that. It's like, it is worth supporting because we don't go over it every single day. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a super chat. This one is from Luis Vasquez, who puts in a $20 donation. He says, "Thank you too for all the work you do. Best Ukraine coverage stream by far, and Slav Ukraine." And also, thank you, Lewis, for the very kind comment.
And thank you, Lewis, for enjoying all the work we do. I try my hardest every single day to make sure that this thing runs as best as possible. We pour our heart and soul into this thing, Matthew and me do. And also, let's see. Let me go to Twitter. Let's see here. And let's check out what Twitter's doing. Oh, we're so close.
We're one follower away.
We're just one away. Oh my god. Oh, dang. But yeah, I mean, like, we are very close right now. We're just one follower away from 5,200. The Twitter's been doing amazing. Matthew's been doing an incredible job out here on the Twitter, making sure that we have amazing tweets and amazing news to cover. And they've been doing incredibly well. And I've been more than happy. Huge shout out to Matthew for running this thing and keeping it going. And also, I try my best to make sure that the news side of things here on the channel and our actual news coverage is as best as it can be. And I thank you so much, Lewis, for finding it to be a great stream. And I thank you for saying it's the best by far. There are some pretty good streams out there. But, I'm sitting, I always want to be modest, but we are the #1 Ukraine war stream by viewership. So I guess we do hold that title. So with that, thank you so much once again, Lewis, for the support and enjoying this channel so much, and also supporting us to help this thing to keep on running. And I was thinking about this, Matthew. What's funny is that other people run their channels kind of like on silent running mode. They get ads, AdSense, and sponsor support. Nobody sees that, but then we get heat because everyone sees the support we get, and it's like, man. I was like, what the hell? It's like, what about that guy over there that runs like a sponsorship
Yeah.
every video? You know, it's like, or that guy
I'll be
who,
shocked at what some of these people are making that
Yeah.
like don't publicize their numbers.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
are making a killing.
like there's one guy out there that's making at least geez, you know, I'm not gonna say it outright, you know, I'm not gonna say who it is or anything, but at least according to the public numbers, they're making at least $120,000 a month. We don't make anywhere near that a single month. Like hell, it's like we sit there and like look at that number, we're like, oh my god, what, like that would be unbelievable to us, and I feel honestly like it's getting into a questionable field there, but you know, that's
But you know, it's fine. We don't make anywhere close to that because that's not the goal. You
no,
know?
it's not.
We're just we're trying to get through school and also trying to help those in Ukraine. That's the goal.
But that's but what I'm trying to say by that though is that we get super chat support, so everyone sees it, and you can literally just count it and then multiply it by 0.7 and see what we make in a night. But then there's people out there who are making like $120,000 a month, and nobody ever physically sees that, and they don't really talk about it. So we get heat for our support, but then someone out there who's just like milling out the sponsors and the AdSense, like nobody even talks about that. You know, unless if you like really look into it a lot. So it's like, you know, it's like, what the hell? Like we're getting so much flack, like sometimes for that. And it's like, well, at least I recognize the people who support us and help us keep running instead of just acting like it's a mill. You know, that's how I look at it.
Oh man, that's raw facts coming from the enforcer.
But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And this is going to be our last one of the night. So, Enforcer, would you like to go through the whole segue?
Yes. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Samuel Kruk, who says, did you guys see the tweet from Soldier that was testing the T-90 in the U.S.?
Let's see. The Soldier supporting the T-90 in the U.S. I didn't see that, actually. So, unfortunately, I wouldn't really be able to comment on that one fairly well. And so with that, I hope we answered that fairly well, and we got one more to answer.
And this one goes to Sharon Flynn again, who puts in a $2 super chat and says, I just followed you on Twitter.
Peter, the Twitter. It's gotten up
And
to...
also shout out to Cap64, who put in a $5 super chat as well without a comment. And thank you for helping people like them.
Oh, we just got up to 5,204.
Igor, yes sir, yes sir.
Oh man, we're getting on up there. Some people are sweating. Some people are starting to sweat, Matthew. They're sweating real good. But anyways, thank you so much for following us on Twitter, and also thank you, Cap, for the support. And with that, it is the end of tonight's stream. I thank everyone so much once again for watching. And also, Tristan said 70%. Yeah. If I said YouTube takes 70%, they take 30%. We get 70% of a super chat. So if you send in $10, we only get $7. So you know, whenever people say, "Oh yeah, but you do this," it's like, nope, you're not doing the math right. But anyways, it is the end of the night. I thank you all so much once again for watching, and I thank y'all so much once again for watching this channel and enjoying it all the way through. There are still 2,500 of y'all here, and if y'all did enjoy and y'all are new, make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit the like button, and also make sure to share this around on your Twitter, on your Facebook, wherever you may be, even on your Instagram, because it does help this channel to keep on growing, and it helps us to spread the word of what we're doing here and help the Sunday fundraiser become even larger and help to keep the focus on Ukraine for the entirety of the war. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and also enjoying the questions segment, which has been going on for about an hour and a half at this point. And so with that, I'll see y'all all tomorrow for the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, and of course, Slava Ukraini.
And good night and Slava Ukraine. And of course, Hiram Slava.
Pukan, pukan.
Pukan.
Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України, ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці, душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького